Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Huntley Withrow underway on this Friday edition. Glad you're with us across OutKick. Includes our YouTube channel. Search out OutKick. Hope you'll subscribe to the channel. Join Chad in the chat live today as we go into the Labor Day weekend. College football kicking off. We've got you covered throughout the afternoon from up until 6 p.m. Eastern here. Chad, a jam-packed show. Kelly in Vegas joins us with the latest spreads and odds going into college football on tonight and tomorrow as we get the full slate. We'll get her top picks. We'll need to follow her advice compared to what we did last night. Danny Kanell will join us in hour number 2. Plus, we have the top 10 games for your college football weekend later in today's show. Chad, good afternoon.
I've been in such a dry spell betting lately.
I agree. Same.
That the fact that I just won NC State UConn just made my night.
Parade.
Yeah, because I that's what I put the most money on, and the fact that it happened and I'm sweating it out, watching the final drive, saying, please just take a knee here, NC State. Please just take a knee. Don't bust a big run and ruin this for me. I feel good about things, and Kelly in Vegas is going to make us feel even better about the weekend.
Speaking of final drives, that's where we start with our top headlines of the afternoon. Scorched Earth here on Hot Mic with Huntley Withrow. Minnesota, they come from behind after an interception against Sims and Nebraska holding the lead. And prior to that, a great toe drag by Daniel Jackson to score for Minnesota. They come from behind and win on a last-second walk-off field goal, 47 yards. And the Golden Gophers take a 1-0 advantage in the win column. Meanwhile, Nebraska, another one-score loss on the road when they had this game at hand. 3 interceptions for Jeff Sims, who's the transfer from Georgia Tech. Throws an interception in the final 3 minutes of the game that leads to that game-winning drive. And, Chad, here is the aggressive defensive backs picking off Sims in what was an egregious interception, the third one especially. And Minnesota escapes with a victory that no one saw coming. I flipped over in the final 3 minutes or so after watching Utah-Florida, and for a boring game, 13-10 the final, the finish was fantastic.
It was a weird game in that I ended up watching most of it because my wife Angie's a huge Nebraska fan, so I had a hard time pulling away from that game. It was not boring. It was low scoring. But it was, razor's edge the entire game. Jeff Sims just really disappointed me. We're going to have Danny Kanell on a little bit later. I got to watch a lot of his coverage on CBS Sports Network last night. Did a great job, pregame and postgame of that UConn-NC State game. But he harped on this, and everyone has harped on this fact with Sims. It's not the fumble by the running back that led to the tying score. It's not the late interception by Jeff Sims, while bad, that I'm going to remember. It's right before the end of the first half. Throw the ball away. Good Lord. That was a horrific decision. He had 87, a tight end, wide open in the front of the end zone, and instead throws it into triple coverage in the back of the end zone. I can understand maybe not seeing one guy, but there were 2 guys sitting on the route. Lobs it right in for the easiest interception you're going to see, and that's where Nebraska did not get points going into the half. Throw the ball away, kick a field goal, it's 3-3 at the break. Instead, you're down 3-0. Now Nebraska had the nice trick play, the throwback from Sims, where he dropped it, picked it up, and still wide open in the end zone. And I thought the Huskers played okay as a 7-point underdog on the road and should have won. It's just another kick in the crotch to one of the best sports fan bases in America. The night before, they had 92,000 people show up to a women's volleyball match. Nebraska fans, and they traveled. There were times you almost had to have to Minnesota calm the Nebraska fans down.
And it's not like it's an embarrassing performance. It's just another single-digit loss.
It's
Bruce
crazy.
Feldman pointed that out last night. They've lost 20 of their last 24 games decided by single digits.
I'm going to talk a little bit about it later, but it's maybe unprecedented what we've seen from Nebraska and their inability to shut the door in a close game. It is.
This is a program
remarkable.
where you do believe in superstition.
Yeah,
or you have to if you don't.
I don't normally buy into that kind of stuff, but it's a program in need of a seance or an exorcism. I don't know what the deal is, because I'm thinking, Angie's sitting there, here it goes. They're going to lose close. Here we go. And I'm thinking, it's Matt Rule. It's not Scott Frost. It's not Mike Riley. This dude was successful at Temple, successful at Baylor. Look at how calm he is on the sideline. It's going to be fine. Even, pregame and halftime, he's not this uptight, insecure guy. He's not going to, white knuckle this thing to the end and lose. They're going to take on more of his personality, and they did not. They took on the personality of Nebraska football over the last decade, which is choke, which is lose close games. That is their identity right now.
Chad, the identity of Florida did not look great, and for the most part, if you had spectrum, and especially in the state of Florida, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, or maybe a situation where you're glad that the game was blacked out. But Disney and Spectrum in a contract dispute, Disney had the decision made to pull the game and throw up a graphic that just said, sorry for the inconvenience, but we're in a contract dispute with Spectrum. Contact your local cable provider and lobby on behalf of you wanting to watch the college football game. They pulled it at 7 o'clock on the dot after pregame coverage led up to kickoff with Utah and Florida. Ended up being a game where Utah dominates. From the opening possession, first play, Barnes with the bomb, Utah just looked totally different. And it's a complete 180, Chad, as we come here the next morning and afternoon after the Florida performance in week 1 last year with Billy Napier. It was all downhill from that first performance that we saw. Now, as we see Graham Mertz, who was just blah, Napier with the coaching mishaps and 2 number 3s on the field on 4th and 3 that gives an automatic first down. It looked sloppy. Meanwhile, Kyle Whittingham is known for preparation, and it looked that way for Utah. The Utes dominate, and Florida now is the discussion of the opposite of what they were at this time last year, which is, man, maybe they do have some trick in the bag. It doesn't appear as though this year offensive line and quarterback, not good.
Hutton, let me start with this Spectrum dispute with Disney and ESPN last night. This is a play in 2 parts. This is a text from my mother, Deborah Withrow, last night, 7:26 p.m. You ready? Says, we are not able to get ESPN or ESPN through Spectrum. They are negotiating. To which I responded and said, well, Mom, that's a huge blow. Go to your ESPN app on your Fire Stick and you can watch there. My mother responds, oh, I know, just frustrating. Tom wanted to go to Utah game during break with Nebraska. You see, here's a problem. Going back and forth with a Fire Stick and having to go to the ESPN app as opposed to just hitting previous channel when you have cable. The good old days, like 5 years ago, when you could do that with no problem. Then my mother changes the subject and says, we flipped to Braves and Acuna hit grand slam on his wedding day. Then Riley hit home run. I said, turning it over now. My mother responds, they just got out of inning. Ronald got married this morning, which I said was weird, but, whatever. Had no idea that was happening in L.A., so congratulations to Ronald Acuna. That's a story we'll get to later. So that was my understanding of the Spectrum-Disney dispute last night, and how I got the news was from my mom. On to the Florida-Utah game.
Well, real quick. Even your mother is noticing now, and I think this is...
it happened yesterday. They pulled the plug on that day for a reason.
But a great example of football and contract disputes. You're going to notice what's going to happen during football season. It happened during the preseason with DirecTV and Nexstar, and it's happening right now with Disney and with Charter and Spectrum, the company, where Disney's saying we want fair market value with the rights to these games. Spectrum is saying, hey, we want ad space within the ESPN Plus and the online and streaming services, and that's where the middle ground has not been met. But it's football that brings on the discussion and the confusion and the pissed off for greatness mentality of the fan bases that are tuning in and realizing this has been going on as a negotiation for a while.
My mom, Debbie Withrow, included, pissed off for greatness based on their decision to do that at the start of football season, and the fact my dad couldn't hit previous channel and just go back and forth between Nebraska, Minnesota, and Utah, Florida. On to that game, though. Florida looks like a very poorly coached team. At least they did last night. And that's the disturbing part to me. You've got the 2 number 3s on the field on the punt return. Billy Napier explained it as, well, we had punt safe on, and I guess the message didn't get out.
One guy's
supposed to come off on punt safe, and he didn't. That's on us. That's something that's within our control that we can correct.
When Herbstreit said one of the guys was supposed to be in 33, and he was in 3.
Weird.
That's what they said during the broadcast.
I guess their roster showed that he's supposed to be in a different number.
Yeah.
Maybe they had, I don't know. Maybe they had some sort of trickeration where they were going to put a different number 3 out there, but not have them on the field at the same time. 9 penalties, 45 yards. You had three fourth down turnovers in the second half.
5 sacks, I believe.
1 touchdown in all those trips into the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Graham Mertz, his overall stats look okay. 31 for 44, over 300 yards, touchdown, interception. But the fact Florida could not run the football at all in this game, and he racked up yards but could not finish in the red zone. Really bad debut in what is an important season for Billy Napier. Now, we should also say, the caveat is here, it is one game.
Overreaction.
And
so
we have seen,
last year.
We overreacted a year ago to Florida beating Utah.
Yes.
So I'm going to be the first one to pump the brakes on Florida's dead and Billy Napier's a bad coach. But all we can go by right now is what we've seen through one game. And what I saw in that game was Kyle Whittingham outcoached Billy Napier, and Florida looked like an undisciplined, poorly coached football team.
It looked like, to me, Florida was the one without some starters in that game, not Utah. Utah was missing more than just their quarterback, and they came out ready to go. The first play where you just knew that. I know they had the kickoff return a year ago that swung momentum early in the game, but with Florida on the road, with all the changes that they've had, especially without Anthony Richardson, to me, it just looked like Utah was far more dominant up front, more confident in their game plan, and a lot of confusion on the Florida sideline. They don't have an offensive line. They don't have a special teams coach at Florida. They have 2 different offensive line coaches, and this is coming from the coach and the program that was boasting about they had more analysts than actual players. This was a photo from 2022. That you can't find a special teams coach. You have to have so many on the field. They'd rather use an analyst in that role, and it came back to bite them. Someone's got to be in charge of who's on, who's not, especially if you have the same number. And Herb Street was saying, hey, if they were told in the pregame meeting, if so-and-so's out there, he's going to be in 33 because they have so many players wearing the same number. Yeah, and that wasn't the case.
Conversation with Davey pregame before the show, he brought this up about Florida. They don't have a special teams coordinator because they have 2 offensive line coaches. So that's also going to be a point of discussion. Watching the broadcast, Kirk Herbstreit's typically not overly critical, but he was pretty blunt in his assessment after one of the Florida penalties, saying this is not a good look for Florida Gators fans. They're not going to be pleased with this. It's not just getting beat by a better team, which Herbstreit acknowledged that may be the case. That they're a favorite for a reason, even with a third-string quarterback. But it's looking like the operations of your team are off, and you're getting dumb penalties and things like that happening. That's a big problem for Billy Napier. But again, one game. We saw it a year ago. They looked like world beaters. They were the talk of college football after week 1. Everybody watched Florida beat Utah, upset Utah in the Swamp. And then they played Kentucky at home next week and lost, right? So they can turn it around very quickly.
State is coming to the Swamp next week.
Yeah, and they'll dominate them. Then they get their crack at Tennessee coming up in the Swamp, where Tennessee hasn't won in 20 years. So they've got plenty of chances on the schedule, but 0 for 1 for Billy Napier, and it's not just 0 for 1 losing to a better team. It's 0 for 1 getting manhandled by what appears to be a better team with a third-string quarterback while looking like you can't coach your way out of a brown paper bag.
Chad, the ACC they've done it. They've added 3 more programs to their ACC roster. Cal, Stanford, and SMU headed to the Atlantic Coast Conference. So if you look into the details of their media rights deal with ESPN and Disney, the number 15 comes up a lot because there's a clause in there for the amount of teams they need to sustain certain aspects of that contract. This now gets them to 18, and if you were to have subtractions of Clemson or Florida State down the road, you still have enough to maintain that contract in certain clauses and in certain areas where you benefit more from the more programming and the more programs you have available for their media partner. SMU is not taking a paycheck from the media rights deal for 7 seasons. And it is confirmed Stanford and Cal will take far less, considerably less, than the average team would get on that Tier 1 price. This is a survival tactic for all three. The big winner, though, to me, is SMU, because they've talked their way in. They've lobbied their way in by coming up with a plan that allowed the vote to happen. They needed one more vote. They got it. And, Chad, they are now, today, relevant. I think that's the whole point of why you jump to the Big 12, why you would consider the ACC. If it's good for Cal and Stanford, it's great for SMU.
Yeah, it's a win for SMU. In terms of the ACC, I don't see this as a win. When the Big Ten added USC and UCLA, that was seen as a big corporate takeover type win, victory.
Yeah.
When the SEC added Texas and Oklahoma, corporate takeover win. This is boring corporate consolidation. It makes sense from a business perspective. It definitely makes sense for Cal, Stanford, and SMU that they're upgrading. Cal and Stanford didn't really have a home, and SMU is upgrading. But this doesn't have the same pizzazz as what we saw with those other conference realignment moves.
Coming up, predictions going into the college football season. We'll tell you who we believe are going to be conference champs and a part of the college football playoff, and our favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. All of that straight ahead. College football weekend straight ahead as well. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network.
He has no empathy, heavy dementia, doesn't even know where the hell he is, and thinks the whole world revolves around him. He's literally telling people who lost their loved ones, who lost their homes, who lost their property, who lost their businesses about a 20-minute kitchen fire. That's a kitchen fire. And this jackass goes on and on and on about a kitchen fire. It wasn't he almost lost his home. I mean, do a little research. A kitchen fire. That's all it is. And this guy has the audacity to go in front of people who lost their island, their city, their homes, their livelihoods, their relatives, and discuss himself. And I can't even, I'm speechless. Every time I see it, I get so pissed off, I can't even tell you. I mean, stupid and arrogant are the worst two things a people can have. If you're smart and you're arrogant, you at least know you're arrogant. If you're stupid, like the dude started out last in his class in everything he's ever been. Now let's get that. The dude cheated on his first wife. The dude is stupid. And stupid and arrogant is no way to go through life. It's the deadliest combination. Deadly. Couldn't be a worse combination. And this guy's got it. He's so arrogant and he's so stupid and he's so not out here, and we got to listen to it. We seriously have to listen to this. I thought there was nobody worse that I ever wanted to listen to than George W. Bush. And then Obama came along with his blah, 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 stupid ass stuff. I mean, his idiotic, trying to be on the wall, every wall, trying to be smarter than he is, blah, 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 blah. And now we got this. This is just embarrassing. This just make you mad. This make you mad, and you got to say to yourself, hold the phone, hang on here. This is horrible. This is a horrible human being speaking to people that have lost everything, and this guy is talking about himself, comparing himself. He was so stupid, he stepped off a curb. Now, we're not going to show you the video. He stepped off a curb in front of firefighters in Lahaina, after the biggest wildfire in American history, and jokingly said, oh, the ground's hot. Well, no kidding. They just had the biggest wildfire in American history, you idiot. And he thinks he's being clever, and people guffaw. It's like Peyton Manning. He said, He said, I can't believe that guy's so funny. It is amazing to me. It is astounding to me. It angers me to no end. This jackass, this arrogant fool gets up there and represents us, and he don't give a rat's double about you or me. Not even kinda. Not even sort of. He don't care about you, me. If he can't promote it, if he can't profit off it, he don't care. It's a career politician, hasn't done a damn thing in his life. I mean, you're sitting there and you've lost everything that you have, and this guy's telling you about, oh, I don't know, a little kitchen fire. Really?
Danny Kanell will join us in an hour. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. 6th and Peabody, our location for the studio with OutKick. Old Smoky Moonshine, Yeehaw Beer. Big weekend here in Nashville, Tennessee, and Virginia. And a lot of fans already here in town kicking off the festivities later tonight and early tomorrow. 11 a.m. kickoff, Chad.
It's going to be a home game for Tennessee, especially based on the people here at 6th and Peabody right now. It's all a certain shade of orange here in Nashville, and it's not Virginia orange.
No, it's not. Kelly in Vegas joins us in about 20 minutes. We'll get her top picks, the host of Bet On It, and we will find out. Based on what I've seen from her, she's taking a lot of points this weekend. So we'll find the underdogs that she's playing this weekend. Chad, it is time for our 2023 college football predictions. We hit on some last year. We swung and missed a lot last year as well. But time to keep tabs on the observations and perception of certain programs that we have in each conference, where we think they're headed versus where they end up at the end of the year. You kick things off for us as we go conference by conference with your top teams that you believe will be the champs at the end of the regular season slate.
Let's start in the ACC, which can now be just called the All Coast Conference, not the Atlantic Coast Conference, considering
I like that.
There are teams on the West Coast also. And my ACC pick for champion, Hutton, will be the Florida State Seminoles. Florida State, I believe they're going to get off to a great start. We'll talk about this game a little bit.
Yes.
In week one. Don't know that I'm ready to pull the trigger on the win, but I think they're going to look good, just like they did a year ago in beating LSU in that game. LSU got a lot better. Florida State under Mike Norvell, a few years in, looked like it was not going to go well. They really turned it around. Jordan Travis is a legitimate Heisman hopeful at quarterback for the Seminoles. I think we probably overrate teams knocking Clemson off in the ACC in most years. But I believe in this Florida State team. I like their defensive line. I like their quarterback play. I think they've got the depth and talent to get it done. Give me the Seminoles to win the ACC. In the Big Ten, Michigan's the best team in that conference. And I feel like every year I come into the season thinking it's going to be Ohio State, and then Michigan has surprised me the last 2 years. At the end of the season, they're not going to surprise me this year. Blake Corum running the football, J.J. McCarthy running and throwing. They're going to get Jim Harbaugh back after 3 easy victories to start the season. Give me the Wolverines, no big surprise there, to win in the Big Ten. Big 12, this is a big surprise. Texas Tech is going to take a big step up. Texas Tech a year ago, when they just didn't turn the ball over 4 or more times, which was a big problem a year ago, 4 turnovers, they were 9-2. Tyler Shuck, it's a weird pronunciation for how the name is spelled, but Tyler Shuck at quarterback, the Oregon transfer, I believe is going to get it done for Joey McGuire and that offense. They lose Donovan Smith to Houston. They get a chance to face Houston and Donovan Smith this season. I like Texas Tech. Here's what I like more than anything in the Big 12, surprise. This is always a conference where every week you've got multiple toss-up games. There's great parity. It's a league that lends itself to a surprise champion, much like last year with Kansas State. Give me Texas Tech as the big surprise. The Red Raiders get it done this year. In the Pac-12, Washington, Michael Penix Jr. is a terrific quarterback. I like that offense. More importantly, I love how they can stuff the run. The Huskies are better defensively than most think. I think they get the best of USC, Utah, and other really good teams in a conference that is dissolving after this season. Surprisingly good league for football this year. And in the SEC, Hutton, it's the Georgia Bulldogs Conference.
Yet again.
Until we're otherwise notified by someone knocking them off. They've got for the SEC, an extremely easy schedule. Not easy for everyone, but easy for an SEC team, especially easy for a program as loaded as Georgia's. Give me the Bulldogs to win another SEC championship.
I considered every team that you're mentioning there, even Texas Tech, because of an interesting matchup they have, not this week but next week, against Oregon. So they've got the former Oregon quarterback against the Ducks coming up in a matter of, 8 days. Chad, we have a lot of opposites, though, for our champions. In the ACC, I'm rolling it back with Clemson. They're 2 points short a year ago of 7 playoff appearances in 8 years. Klubnik, Adam Randall, a very talented receiver, Will Shipley at running back, and just knowing that their defense with Trotter and Carter at linebacker, their defense is going to win them ball games. Not just keep them in, but win them games. And I'm a believer in Klubnik with Shipley as the running back, very talented, as we all know. Clemson's back in the ACC. For the Big Ten, this is Ohio State's year for me. They've got plenty of motivation. Ryan Day, I believe, is getting way too much heat for his performance against Michigan, but good news for him. Michigan's more focused on Georgia now, based on signs that they're putting up and drills that they have during practice. They're focused more on Georgia, which currently is not on their schedule. Ohio State is. I'm taking the Buckeyes to win the Big Ten. And on top of that, Chad, another part of that is with what I expect from the run game with Travion Henderson and then Williams as well. Dual threat, Marvin Harrison Jr. I think there's tons of talent there on offense, enough to get it done on defense. Ohio State wins the conference this year. From the Big 12, you've got Texas Tech. I'm sticking with Kansas State. They didn't make it past TCU in the Big 12 championship
Kelly and Vegas
game.
will be thrilled with this pick.
Kansas State for me,
grad.
Based on who's returning and the experience of the returning starter at quarterback that was able to step in and win all the way up to the Big 12 championship game. And when I look at the offense, 8 returning starters, offensive line there is going to be great. Not just good, but great. They can win the line of scrimmage, and they can spin the football down the field. Give me Kansas State in the Big 12. From the Pac-12, Washington for you, I'm going Oregon. I'm a believer in what I saw from Bo Nix. And I learned a lot about Dan Lanning in the way he handled that football team after getting destroyed by Georgia in Week 1. I just like the moxie, the preparation, the overall mentality. No one abandoned ship. They look way different after that game, continued to improve. Some tough games on the slate. And what is I find it interesting, neither of us went with USC here. I don't mind the Washington pick. I like them too. I think Bo Nix is in the Heisman discussion sooner rather than later, based on the way their schedule plays out. And in the SEC, LSU, I think if you're going to pick a year where you're going against Bama or you're going against Georgia, this is the year to do it. And it's the year to pick LSU because they're a year ahead of where we thought they'd be. And Jayden Daniels returns. Meanwhile, the other programs are bringing new quarterbacks in. And if you don't perform well early on at Georgia, they want you benched. It's not like you have time. I realize the schedule's easy, but it's also about performance. And I'm not high on either quarterback option at Alabama. I know Nick Saban is. That's why no one's concerned. But give me LSU out of the SEC based on performance from the coach, quarterback, and who they're able to return.
You're going with the tie goes to returning quarterback rule for the SEC
for the most part, yeah. But also, like, I just think LSU is really good. LSU played for the conference title a year ago. And I think they're back, and they're talented, extremely talented, based on what we've seen from Brian Kelly.
We did not confer with each other on any of these picks. So the fact that we were opposite, it just worked out that way. We were both contrarian, which we love. So we're going next to playoff picks. Shall I begin?
Yeah.
My 2024 college football playoff. Avert your eyes if you are an SEC hater, because you are not going to love what I'm about to do right here with these picks. Number 1 seed is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 2, the Michigan Wolverines. Out of the Big Ten, I feel like I'm Greg Gumbel releasing the brackets on Selection Sunday.
Yeah.
The number 3 seed out of the
already
Southeastern
been
Conference.
Already leaked an hour ago.
Coached by Nick Saban, one of the all-time greats, the Alabama Crimson Tide. The number 4 seed out of the Pacific Northwest and the Pac-12, which is no longer the Washington Huskies. My Pac-12 champion, I've got them in the playoff. So Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Washington, which would be Georgia playing Washington, Michigan v. Alabama. My national championship game, again, avert your eyes if you hate the SEC. It's happening, everyone. Again, Alabama versus Georgia for the national title. My national champion, Hutton, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Getting it done. Jalen Milroe, Chris Lowe announced today, he is the starter for Alabama. He's going to shock everyone. They got the dual threat back at Alabama. He's going to run for a lot of yards. He's going to throw for a lot of yards. Alabama, they're back. It's like they never left. They're your 2023 national champion.
If you are an SEC hater, you're going to love my college football playoff. Number 1 seed is my SEC champion, LSU, the LSU Tigers, followed by Clemson. I think Clemson's dominant this year in the ACC. Ohio State, winners of the Big Ten, they're in the college football playoff. And Notre Dame, Sam Hartman at quarterback. I have recency bias here on what I just saw in Dublin, but also just how they're built and how the schedule plays out. I think Notre Dame has a great shot against Ohio State. And they play in 2 or 3 weeks, I believe. It's in September. Ohio State ends up winning the conference, and they get in. Notre Dame is in the college football playoff as well. National championship game, Chad, I've got Ohio State over Clemson. And this is quite the year for Marvin Harrison Jr. and company, a group that's going to put up a ton of points, and I think their defense has to be better. So I'm riding the offense there compared to the Michigan Wolverines and how their season should play out in the meeting against the Buckeyes in November.
I especially given what we saw a year ago when Ohio State was in that playoff, they had Georgia. They had every chance to beat them and put them away. So it would not surprise me at all if Ohio State gets it done. And this is what we love about predictions. We're probably going to be wrong. Maybe we are. We can come back and make fun of it, but people can pick it apart all you want. I think it's going to be another big year for the SEC.
It's always a big year, though.
They don't take any years off. If we know one thing about SEC football, it's that there's no years taken off.
Well, Bama loses 2 games, and it's awful.
Yeah.
It's
a rebuilding year.
Yeah, same at Clemson, you could say. Chad, Heisman Trophy winner for you. And how do they get it done?
There's a consistent, and I hate the colors purple and gold, quite frankly, for sports teams, but there's a consistent purple and gold theme for me, and it's not the LSU Tigers. It's with the Washington Huskies. I'm going Michael Penix Jr. as you got to say that name very slow every time. I'm going to go with him as the Heisman Trophy winner, the lefty. Very impressed with him within this offense for Kalen DeBoer a year ago. I think he gets it started. Maybe a game that's in my top 10 coming up later. Boise State coming to town. In their first game tomorrow. Big game, opening weekend. I think Washington is one of the better stories of the season. I think they're going to win the Pac-12, and I think the biggest reason for that is going to be their quarterback. Give him the Heisman Trophy. Second straight year, a Pac-12 quarterback wins the Heisman Trophy, but it's not the guy who won it a year ago. It's Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington.
I like that. Hear me out here.
Okay.
I'm going with Marvin Harrison Jr., and while he's not touching the football in every play, I think there are quarterbacks that will cancel each other out, more or less, in the vote and how you stack and rate. And I'm not going West Coast because I don't think a lot of the Heisman voters watch a lot of West Coast football until the very end of the year. I think the momentum and the eyeballs will be on Ohio State of the group I'm looking at. And I think it's a lot like 2020 with Devontae Smith because you had Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones as finalists for the Heisman Trophy, but the nod went to Devontae Smith based on his production and his importance to the offense, but you also looked around and you had reason to vote for someone else, And the tie didn't go to the quarterback in this instance. It went to the wide receiver. I think we can see that too. Plus, Harrison's got the momentum and the hype going into the season, and he's playing with his former high school quarterback. I mean, I think it kind of writes a great script for what his season should look like. If he puts up more than what he did a year ago, he's winning the Heisman Trophy, and we're pointing to him as the top wide receiver going into the NFL draft.
Hutton, I was close to picking Caleb Williams to be the first to repeat.
Okay.
Since Archie Griffin did it way back in the early 70s. But you know why I didn't? Their defense. And bear with me here. I think for him to win it, they're going to need to win a national title or be right there undefeated and a chance to win. I know it's given out before then, but be in the playoff, be undefeated. He's going to have to surpass what he did a year ago. And part of that is probably going unbeaten. And I think their defense is going to prevent them from doing that.
I mean, unlike last year, the expectation is he's already in the conversation. He's already back in New York, right, with the Heisman Trust. And they would have to he won it last year just because everyone else kind of canceled out. This year, I don't know if the defense really hurts him because he's going to have to put up 40 and 50 points a week. That's going to help pad those stats. I'm saying the defense
is going to lose him a game. His stats are going to be great regardless. I feel like defense is going to lose them 1 or 2 games. That's going to cost them the Heisman.
We need to win games this weekend. Kelly in Vegas helps us do that. That's coming up next. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
GOP presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy thinks that all voters should be able to pass a civics test, so I'm here on Broadway to see how we're doing. Can you name 3 cabinet positions?
Oh, Secretary of State.
Yep.
Secretary of Labor.
Yep.
And we'll go the Secretary of Education.
Correct. What is the capital of Tennessee?
That one. I have no idea. Tallahassee. No, that's Florida. That's Florida. Tennessee.
Yeah.
No.
Do you know the capital of Tennessee? What the hell? These people don't even like me.
All right, I'll give you a hint. You're standing in it. How many U.S. senators are there?
Way too many.
Well, they're way too old, I'll tell you that.
Not enough to do the job right, that's for sure.
If something bad happens to the president, who takes over?
The vice president.
Who is our vice president right now?
What does it start with? What's the first letter start with?
K.
Not sure. I don't know.
Okay. When was the Constitution written?
1976.
1787. How many amendments does the Constitution have?
32.
27. How many U.S. senators are there?
More than 50.
That's true, yes.
Because there's 50 states. There you go.
And how many senators are from each state?
2.
So how many is that?
100.
There you go. It's just basic math. You got it.
I have to really think.
What ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
Pacific?
East coast.
Atlantic, then.
There you go. If something bad happens to the president and the vice president, who takes over?
First one up from Congress?
And who is that?
Some old man.
Do you know what ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
Pacific?
Atlantic, sorry. Wait. Atlantic. What is the capital of Tennessee? Nashville. It's Nashville, guys. How many years do we elect a senator for?
4.
6. What about a congressman?
That's 4.
2.
It's just a trick question, so.
Before he was president, Eisenhower was a general in what war?
World War II. He commanded Operation Overlord and D-Day invasion.
Correct. When was the Constitution written? Before that.
1854.
Before that.
1818.
Before that.
1777.
After that.
1789.
Before that?
1784.
After that?
1785.
After that?
1786.
After that?
1777.
After that? You were so close.
1778.
No.
Kanye West, Kanye 2024, big time. I wrote him in West Virginia, put him on the ballot.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? So proudly we hail, so.
Sixth and Peabody location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Honey Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, it's not even the first Saturday of the true kickoff to the college football season, and we already need a nice rebound based on our performance last night. Wagering.
I'm so bad at gambling right now that the one win I got out of 5 last night, I'm just holding all my hopes on and thinking that's the one I talked about on the show.
Yeah.
That's the one that I'm going to carry through to give me some confidence and momentum over the weekend.
The host of Bet On It is Kelly in Vegas, and she joins us now on Hot Mic. Kelly, good to see you. How did it go last night for you?
Hey, guys. Well, unlike Chad, I have something called discipline. I missed a good number on Utah, should have laid the 4.5, went back and forth with some of my guy friends and said, you know what? I missed it. It's okay. Didn't matter anyway. I've got to play for tonight, but 6 plays on Thursday night right out of the gate, Chad. Sounds like we need to have some bankroll management lessons here, sir.
I need something. Hey, I will say we just had our college football predictions for the year, Kelly, and Hutton picked K-State to win the Big 12.
Yep.
I wanted to pass that along to you. I picked Texas Tech, which I know you're probably going to laugh at because you also have Wyoming, right? Covering against Texas Tech.
I do have Wyoming this week.
But you don't think they're going to win.
Touchdowns.
Okay.
But now I hate my Texas Tech pick to win the Big 12.
Oh, nice.
I may need to revisit that myself. That's where
Kindred spirits, Hutton. We're kindred spirits. Look at that. Both of us riding the Red Raiders all the way to the championship.
I think that they're going to be a really scrappy team. I like Joey McGuire. They returned 17 guys on both sides of the ball. This team is going to be scrappy. They're flying under the radar. But yes, I am on Wyoming plus 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, is it still at 14? Right on the money there?
Last I saw, it was. I'd be lying if I said I had an odds screen open right now, though.
But Texas Tech, Kelly, you think this is a close game just based on Wyoming and who they're returning?
So they are returning several guys. I really like Craig Bull. I think Wyoming last year really took a step back, but I do expect this team to kind of be one of those scrappy underdogs. And I got corrected today on Instagram. It is elevation, not altitude. So the elevation in Laramie is a tough place to play, especially for athletes coming from Lubbock. And don't forget, who does Texas Tech have on next week? And that's why I like their over 7.5 wins. They play the Oregon Ducks. Maybe this game, it's hard to look ahead the first game of the season. You want to go 1-0. I think they win by 10.
Who was so precious that they had to correct you on elevation versus altitude? That seems very
someone
nitpicky.
in Wyoming.
No, actually not. Just, my good buddy John always likes to say there's many losers on the internet. So one of those types of guys, anything to somehow discredit me. So now I know it is elevation, not altitude.
I'm curious, Kelly, about betting bias and how sometimes we'll find ourselves maybe favoring one situation over and over again. It kind of paid off for me last night. I bet UConn to cover against NC State. I tend to favor the smaller team or the underdog team when they get a bigger program coming to their place, right? Like every time that happens, I tend to go with that. You've got North Texas covering the 6.5 also. I love this play, and I tend to always draw my eyes to these games when you have these group of 5 teams hosting bigger teams.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that as well. several times over the next few weeks, right? The underdog, the team that everybody counts out, and how much does the big name Power 5 program really care? I mean, nice cover by UConn, a couple of bad jabs there by the refs to keep NC State up by double digits, but great play by you. So I'm glad you got to cash that ticket. But as far as North Texas goes, this team is really great. I was kind of shocked to see them part ways with Seth Luttrell, but Eric Morris coming from the Pac-12, coaching at Wazoo last year, he was the offensive coordinator. He knows this Cal Golden Bears team, right? And what do we know about them? They give up a ton of points, 35.2 points per game last season. They don't play any defense. What I think we're going to see from the Mean Green is a ton of rushing, right? They have a really solid offensive line, and they are just going to run that ball down their throat. It's going to be really hot in Denton, Texas tomorrow. Very, very hot, in fact. So I expect Cal not to quite be on their A game. And I had a really good, we'll call it an insult. I was going to call them conference lists, the Pac-4. And then the ACC came in this morning and did me dirty.
Kelly in Vegas with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow here on OutKick. Kelly, a lot of people that I've noticed on social, they're heavy on Washington against Boise State. In what should be a shootout performance, on paper at least, you're also taking the Huskies to cover.
I like to bet the dogs. I get a lot of grief for it until those underdogs went outright and we get that nice plus money. That's just kind of where I've always looked, right? And I never really pay that much attention to some of these big favorites. But throughout the week, I've heard a lot of really sharp guys tell me they liked Washington. I started looking at this a little bit more, and you're going to hear this term a lot over the next, 12 weeks or so. Square dog. That means they're getting a lot of love from the public, and that's exactly what Boise State is tonight. I think Michael Penix Jr. is an absolute stud. Washington, as we know, will be going to the Big Ten next year. I think the expectations are really high, and I think the precedent to go out there and play a really tough game tonight is going to be set early. I have Washington win this game by 17, so let's hope that laying 14 does not come back to bite me.
I'll follow you.
Yeah, look, we all know I have no discipline, so I'll bet all these games. All right, I was
Parlay.
1-5 last night. This will be my parlay for the weekend, no doubt
okay,
about
it. Whoa. We got to back this up. We're not doing this every week, Chad. We're going to bet these straight. We're going to walk away. Listen, if we
no
go
parlays,
if we go 6 and 4 this week, okay, the only types of parlays I do are money line parlays. So we can get into that throughout, the course of the season. But parlays are absolute sucker bets. Everybody knows it. That's why
you're looking at two.
Exactly. We didn't never claim to be good at gambling. We like to do it. Now, what I need,
we like
Kelly,
to really gamble.
at some point, maybe not now, but next week, for parlay purposes, even if and you're right, it is a sucker bet. But even if that's so, I want like your confidence pool, like the top 2 or 3 that you feel best about, and then I'll parlay. I'm not going to parlay all 8 of these that you're playing this weekend, but I will parlay the top 2 or 3. And just to show the depth that you'll go to on the college football schedule on the weekend, give us why you're taking Toledo +9 and South Alabama +6. These are not the top tier games most people are looking at.
You're right, but it's week 1 and you got to dig deep, right? We have these monster spreads. We see USC favored by like 38.5. Like, I'm looking for underdogs that can win the game outright. So if you want to parlay, what you should parlay is North Texas money line, South Alabama money line, and Toledo money line. But we'll get into that in a minute. I think Tulane's britches have gotten a little too big down there in New Orleans. I mean, we know they just beat USC in the Cotton Bowl, and hey, this team is, fighting for, getting a little bit more respect. But I think regression's coming for Willie Fritz's squad. They lost 9 players to the NFL. And I just think that they might be looking ahead to Ole Miss next week. Are they going to really get up for South Alabama? And there's only like 2 hours between these 2 schools. So I do think that there's going to be a ton of Jaguars fans who travel there. Coach Womack has 18 starters returned. 16 of them are 6th-year seniors. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot. Obviously, that kind of team where they are significantly older, we saw it with Georgia, winning back-to-back national championships. That is an advantage here. So South Alabama's been scrappy for me as an underdog over the last couple of years. I'm going to ride with them again here.
Sorry, go ahead. No, hit it.
No, I was going to say, as far as Toledo goes, really quick, Illinois, great underdog, terrible favorite. I like Brett Bielema, but I'm not sure about this Ole Miss transfer quarterback he's got here, and I could be dead wrong, but the MAC schools have been not great to me. They're not a conference I traditionally follow, but Toledo caught on my radar. The Rockets, I think, have a great offensive output. We've seen them come out in these road openers over the last 12 seasons and cover spreads. Maybe they can go into Champaign and win this one.
We know the betting problems with Iowa and Iowa State. Northern Iowa's probably doing it too, but we haven't heard crap about them. And you would say if they were happening, if they pull out their app on the way to the stadium tomorrow, you would take Northern Iowa plus 8.5 against Iowa State.
Iowa State, man, they are in just disarray. I was a big Matt Campbell fan when he got hired. A couple of years ago, I took their season win total under. I got obliterated for it. Everybody thought they were going to be Big 12 champs. It's a tough place to recruit. You ever been to Ames, Iowa in November?
I don't plan to.
No, and I would not recommend it. Let me tell you how many birthdays 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old Kelly lost and was miserable in Ames, Iowa, like every other year. It was just terrible because that's what Iowa State does. They're a great underdog late in the year. They don't need to be laying a ton of points. Should they absolutely beat up on a Northern Iowa team? Sure. Are they going to? I guess we're going to find out.
So as we're doing this right now, Kelly, I just parlayed North Texas, Toledo, South Alabama money line. I put $3 down. That will pay $98.
There you go.
If those three underdogs win outright.
Yeah,
it was like 38-1.
We're going to hit
like
one
that.
this season. Unfortunately, last year, Will Levis kind of hurt us there in Oxford. Otherwise, we had it under wraps. But one of those kind of things goes our way. We're gonna hit one of these, and hopefully everybody will be very happy.
A game that people are talking about more than Northern Iowa, Iowa State this weekend will be LSU and Florida State on Sunday night. Kelly, what do you think about this matchup? A game everyone's going to be watching.
You know, it's tough. I reside in the state of Florida most of the year. I've seen Florida State in action several times over the last few years. I'm not a big Mike Norvell fan. I don't understand some of his coaching blunders now, coupled with the fact that everybody thinks they're going to be in the college football playoff. They're trying to give Jordan Travis the Heisman. There's a lot of hype with this team. On the flip side, Brian Kelly, not a fan of him personally, but we have to give him credit here as a head coach. Last year, as you remember, they were down 24-10. LSU came roaring back, lost on a last-second PAT. Rough way to go out. I'm going to tell you this. We know that some sharp money came in on the under, and that's how I'm going to be playing this one. I know everybody wants to see a shootout on Sunday night, but I'm going to be cheering for the opposite. Hopefully a snooze fest like last night, Florida, Utah, or even worse, Minnesota, Nebraska.
Which quarterback do you take, Rattler or May, in North Carolina, South Carolina?
Ooh. So I think that's the other thing interesting about Spencer Rattler. I do like Shane Beamer. Obviously, Mac Brown is the tenured head coach, right? He has more wins than any other coach right now in FBS, which is awesome. I think Spencer is more athletic, but I think that Drake May has a better quarterback IQ. If I had to play it, I'd lay it with the Tar Heels. I'm not going to get involved in that game. Neutral site in Charlotte should be absolutely electric, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a shootout there.
Do you normally take, if the spread's like 28 to 30 points in these blowout games, do you normally take the points?
No, actually, historically, especially week one, we've seen that these usually come to fruition, right? Spreads above 35.5 points are hitting at almost a 60% clip historically. I don't like to step in front of some of these teams. I think it kind of varies, like depending on, like, let's look at USC last week, right? They should have absolutely throttled San Jose State, but they still don't know how to play defense. So those types of numbers usually just scare me away. They don't really ever make my card. You got to really kind of get the insight there, right? Usually if they're a big spread, let's say in SEC country, like we've seen with Alabama and teams like Missouri or Arkansas years ago where they were absolutely horrible. Yeah, I'm going to take the dog there because eventually guys like Saban are actually going to call off the dogs. These kind of coaches like Lincoln Riley and we've seen the likes of these more high-powered offenses, they have to keep their foot on the gas because their defenses don't ever help them out.
Kelly in Vegas has been with us, making us some money. We'll give you a 3% commission based on our victory.
I love it.
Great insight. I love that we both took Texas Tech to win the Big 12.
I'm actually very scared as a K-State fan for that game in Lubbock. I will not be in attendance because I do think they will probably lose.
Well, hopefully you can join us again at some point during the season. But also, if this parlay hits with these 3 underdogs winning outright, your phone will be blowing up for a while, probably from me and Hutton, because we'll have won some decent money on not laying a lot of money on that parlay. Kelly, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the long weekend.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
She's the host of Bet On It, Kelly in Vegas. Follow her on social, Kelly in Vegas. She makes it simple.
Very
Coming
simple.
up in about 25 minutes, Danny Kanell will join us. And when we return, a college football program in need of an exorcism. That's where we start. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And
I mean,
what he reposted
he
and then how he did it.
He bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here of the Friday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Plenty of college football discussion on tap for the next couple of hours. Danny Kanell will join us coming up in 20 minutes. Plus, Withrow brings you the top 10 games for your college football weekend. That's coming up in the final hour. You can join us across the OutKick network, outkick.com. YouTube, our streaming live there. If you search out OutKick, we hope you subscribe. Chad is in the chat. And we're streaming across Twitter, X, Facebook, and more. And if you're listening, we say thank you for listening to this great radio partner. Chad, Utah takes down Florida really with ease. Whittingham had his team prepared. Napier didn't on the Florida sideline. Which team do you feel like you learned more about? And we're trying not to overreact to one performance because we did a year ago with the Gators. But while I feel like I've learned more about Florida, Utah, to me, gets over a hurdle that they were not able to do a year ago on the road in the swamp. And they end up winning the Pac-12. But by winning last night and having the national audience that they had, albeit blacked out with Charter and Spectrum and Disney, I think this puts them right on the path for the college football playoff. They've got a 4-game stretch later in the season where they will play USC, Oregon, and Washington. The only game in between that is Arizona State. They also should have ranked opponents like Oregon State earlier in the season. Plus, by the end of the year, they have a layup. They should have a layup against Colorado. I think the Utes are legitimate. And more than just there's a Pac-12 champ that's going back to the Rose Bowl. No. Cam Rising will be coming back. Bryson Barnes looked pretty good. And their defense at Utah is always steady. I like what I saw last night, albeit against a very average SEC opponent.
I think we learned more about Florida in the game, and I'll say that only for this reason. We watched Utah without their starting quarterback.
Right.
So at least we saw Florida with Graham Mertz, who is going to be the starter this season, and we saw the third-string quarterback for Utah. But if that's the case, I'm with you in that says a lot of great things about Utah in the Pac-12 that they were able to beat Florida with their third-string quarterback.
They have Baylor next week.
And we just don't know what Cam Rising is going to look like when he comes back from the torn ACL. We don't know what that team's going to look like. We don't know if play calling changes. I don't think it does. They're always going to be a team that's going to look to beat you physically first and foremost and not over the top. But they showed last night with the first play of the game, a 70-yard touchdown pass, that they can beat you over the top. So I was super impressed with that team. Kyle Whittingham, by the way, just looks like the perfect coach for Utah. The guy looks like a Carhartt advertisement on the sideline. Just looking at him there in the photo that we just showed, I was thinking about that last night. This is a guy who just goes in the mountains and comes back 4 days later. I think he goes up there with a knife and that's it, and he could probably survive. Perfect coach in the perfect place, running the perfect style, getting the perfect types of players for his program and what he wants to do. That's what I think about with Utah. Hutton, we talked about this in last year's preseason, a team with a clear identity of what they want to do and who they want to be, and they showed that last night.
And I think far too many people are pointing to USC as the hope for the Pac-12 in the final year of the Pac-12. And I'm looking at the back-to-back champs in Utah to be that team. And they don't have to turn their head and look over their shoulder and be like, yeah, week one. Oregon would have to do that too against Georgia. But Utah lost to a very average Florida team a year ago. And at least in this case, there was no doubt who the better team was on the field. Meanwhile, last night as well, Nebraska, they lose on a walk-off field goal, 47 yards against Minnesota, 13-10 the final. And Chad, it is yet again same song, different verse for Huskers fans.
Nebraska needs an exorcism. They need a seance. They need something to happen. They need to burn some incense in the training facility. Something drastic has to take shape there, because this is a program that we talked about the identity of Utah and what they are. Here's what Nebraska is. They're a team that is good enough talent-wise, scheme-wise, everything else, to play you close. And they're also a team that when they play hard enough and play well enough to play you close, they're going to find a way to lose it in the end. And last night is the perfect example of that. They were the better team. They dominated that second half. Coming out of the locker room, they were the far better team. They're milking the clock, up 7. They're entering Minnesota territory, and you got a running back who doesn't protect the football, and it gets stripped from behind. Minnesota takes over, scores. Then they're moving the ball again with Jeff Sims, and you've got an ill-advised pass that leads to an interception that then leads to the game-winning field goal with no time left for Minnesota. This is a team, and not just a team, a program that loses. Matt Rule, and when I say that name, people that are familiar with the NFL will say, well, maybe it's the Matt Rule from Carolina. I don't think so. Matt Rule's a winner in college football. And first and foremost, before he's a winner, he is a program changer. He's got a lot of changing to do psychologically with that Nebraska program because those players are conditioned to lose when the game gets tough. They get nervous, they get scared, and they lose ball games that are right there in the grasp. There's a graphic that we showed earlier on a tweet that I want to highlight right now, and it's one that shows exactly how bad they've been in one-score games. The crying Jordan meme never gets old, by the way. This was posted the moment that game ended. Single-digit possession games record in Nebraska. Bo Pelini was 20-11. Bill Callahan 10-7. This is where it gets bad. Mike Riley 7-10. Scott Frost, which eventually got him fired in his 5th season, 5-22 in one-score games, and now Matt Rule 0-1. Nebraska thought they could do better when they had Frank Solich, who was a Tom Osborne guy when he took over. They couldn't. They hired Bill Callahan. It was far worse. They get rid of him. Bo Pelini had a nice stretch at Nebraska, getting them into Big 12 championship games. Pretty good teams, good defenses, scored some points at times, and Ndamukong Suh went through the program. Nebraska convinced themselves they could do better than Bo Pelini. They have not since then with the two coaches. Hutton, I believe in Matt Rule. I believe that he is, especially making $9.5 million a year to be the coach of Nebraska.
We saw what he did at
He
Baylor.
will turn it around. I saw a team last night that looked more competent than they did a year ago. But what are we going to be harping on? The big mistakes from the quarterback, the running back with the fumble, but the 2 interceptions.
Well,
it just drives you crazy watching this story over and over again.
Yeah, and the question was, would Sims be different because he's getting out of that offense with Georgia Tech, right? And he carried the ball like 15 to 20 times, but the average, not great. Of course, the sacks are counted against that. But I'm looking, Chad, I'm looking at this from, is this more about the Nebraska defense, this run of one-score games? Is it more about the defense or the quarterback and the offense getting in position to go win? You know, how many times have they had the ball and they've been unable to drive and get points? Or had the takeaway, the way Minnesota did last night, and get in position to hit a 47-yard field goal and win. Scott Frost, for all of the ridicule, and deservedly so, 5-22.
It's crazy.
Is the record in one-score games for Scott Frost, who's remembered as a failure with that fan base where he is beloved. 5-22. Normally, the odds kind of even out for you, right? Eventually, you have to have a game going your way. On a one-score, no, it just has not gone in that direction, and part of it too is probably Big 10 versus Big 12.
Yeah, that's part of it, but I mean they're still in position to win these games, even in the Big 10. Here's what I think really needs to happen. I said an exorcism. Part of the exorcism to me is it's not going to be good enough just to hold on for dear life in a game and have some other team make a mistake later. They're going to have to kick the door in. There's going to have to be a late game scenario where they get every break and they make every break and they come from behind and win a game late. They steal one the way it felt like Minnesota stole it last night. They need one of those type of games. You know those feelings. It's probably going to come in Lincoln in a big game to where they're going to win an unexpected game, and it is going to feel like a religious experience for those fans. It is going to feel like an exorcism. They're going to get the breaks late. They're going to make big plays, and they're going to steal one late. I think that's what it takes to break that stigma. I'm not one who believes in curses
I don't.
And superstition, but I do believe in psychology getting to you, and that eventually the guys who should be making plays for you, they get worn down mentally and start to expect the worst. And they're not out there just making plays.
But in this case, so many transfers for Rule. So the psychology of what has happened shouldn't be stuck with.
It's carried over. That's what's crazy. And the guy who's the new quarterback who wasn't there a year ago is the guy making the biggest mistakes. Let me say this about Sims, who I'm high on coming into the season, but I was not impressed with last night. He played to me like an adult flag football quarterback that just decides he's going to run it every time because he's faster than the defense.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a lot of thought given on the read option. It just got to the point where, Jeff Sims is going to try to run for 6 or 7 yards on every play, and he's not looking down the field. He's not looking to be a passer. He's not looking to hand it off or read the defense when he needs to. Hey, there's the first pair of Virginia fans we've seen here. Hello, the whole time in Nashville. You're not seeing any of that with him. It's just a guy ready to take it and run.
I don't know what we see from Colorado against TCU. I think it's a blowout, right? I think we all do. But those stats that we saw in the one score, this makes the Colorado-Nebraska matchup next week far more appealing for a national audience, at least for me.
I think it's got a chance to be a low-scoring game for the taking for either team. What a huge win that would be for Coach Prime in his debut in Boulder.
I mean, if we're just trying to stack teams, Minnesota and Nebraska, very close to one another, right? If we're just trying to think about where these programs are, Minnesota's winning the tight games. They're getting bowl eligible. They're moving to the postseason. Nebraska's losing these games that keep them out of the postseason. Meanwhile, it is going to be an extraordinary year for Prime to reach 6 wins. So if you're counting those, this would be one of them in a tight window game where Nebraska usually falters.
I'll also say this about the game last night. P.J. Fleck has done as good a job as anyone at Minnesota over the years.
You like the tie? You're a big fan of the tie.
I do kind of like the outfit. I don't like some of the stuff with him, but Coach Row your boat.
Yeah.
That team's not doing anything this year. I was very underwhelmed by Minnesota that they lost Muhammad Ibrahim last year, and they don't have the running back, the running game that they've had. The quarterback is not going to scare anybody. The guy with the Greek name that I can't even pronounce that was playing for him last night. I was very underwhelmed by Minnesota offensively in that game. I don't think they're going to be much of a factor with the good teams on their schedule in the Big Ten.
That toe drag by Jackson was awesome.
It was an amazing catch.
That was fantastic.
And it was, a split second before that foot went down
and
out
a
of
great
bounds.
He looked at it. He was
He was nodding his head. Yep, you got it as he went in there, right there on top of it.
Slow-mo and all that. I mean, it was. I didn't know if he got it down or not. Props to the official, was right on top of it. The other team in the Big Ten we're not talking about, kind of like we're not going to talk about Minnesota, that are an afterthought, Penn State. This should be – they have a chance to climb the ladder.
Well, I think they're very much –
Hutton,
I almost put them in the playoff this year. I was very close to it. Clay Travis even tweeted, name your crazy prediction for the season, and I said Penn State wins it all. I think this is a chance for a breakthrough year for James Franklin. It's just –
get the quarterback
It's
right.
still very hard for me to pick them over Michigan with what they have coming back in Ohio State with Marvin Harrison Jr. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. as the Heisman Trophy winner. It's very hard for me to pick them, but I think they're going to be really good. They run the football really well, and they are great against the run. We'll get into this in my top 10 games of the week. This is a sort of a strength-on-strength game where it does not bode well for West Virginia in the opener, where they are a good rushing team, but they are running up against a brick wall defense in Penn State against the run. But I'm high on Penn State this year. I think they're going to do great things. We need to get our guy Christian Hackenberg back on to talk about them as the season goes on.
Starting to do a podcast that's primarily Nittany Lion football. Chad, Ole Miss football. Matt Corral, heck of a final year paired with Lane Kiffin. Ends up being a third-round pick for the Carolina Panthers. He's been claimed by the New England Patriots, who let go of Zappi and Malik Cunningham earlier this week at the cut-down roster deadline. They've got both of those quarterbacks back on the practice squad, and Matt Corral, who was lost for the season in the preseason last year with a Liz Frank injury, claimed by Belichick and the Patriots as the backup on the active roster for Mac Jones. Now, you can elevate a player off your practice squad and have them active for game day and then send them back to your practice squad, which they can do with one of the two QBs. But this is on Mac Jones, and now they've got from that same draft Corral in the mix as well, who was, quote-unquote, in a competition a year ago, speaking of Matt Rule, with the Panthers, then gets hurt, and we know how that season played out for Baker Mayfield.
Now, I'm sure there's some sort of crossover here that I'm missing, but there's no carryover on that Patriot staff with Lane Kiffin other than Bill O'Brien, succeeded Lane Kiffin as offensive coordinator at Alabama, right? They didn't share time there at all together. I'm trying to put the dots together on
Corral.
Is there a Kiffin connection that could vouch for Corral with the Patriot staff?
Was O'Brien in the booth as an analyst for a year?
I don't. Maybe. Or did he just step right in to be the OC?
I don't know.
When he went to Alabama.
I'll look it up.
I don't think there's crossover there, but that was the first thing that popped in my mind was, is there a Kiffin Patriots connection with Bill O'Brien or someone on staff that led to them signing Matt Corral? I don't think so, but I mean they've got to get a backup quarterback one way or the other, so this is the guy.
Yeah, I mean they could essentially have a backup elevated to their active roster. They have to be the number 2 because if you're going to have a emergency quarterback, they have to be on the active roster, and if you pull them up from the practice squad, he's got to be on the roster for 3 weeks, guaranteed. So that's the dilemma that you have if you want to have the third QB as the emergency guy. He's taking up one of your spots of the 53, but wouldn't count against your 48 on Sunday. Corral. And they made these moves peculiar. They made these moves knowing that they weren't necessarily guaranteed to get Zappy back, and they didn't know who was going to be available to claim.
It's time to go from Corral to Kanell.
Yes. Florida State, LSU, the ACC making 3 additions. Danny Kanell with the very latest. We get his take on everything college football. That's next on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Turner he was struggling. They were booing the hell out of him in Philly. On August 4th, his numbers were this: through 108 games, he's hitting 236 with a 289 on base percentage and a 656 OPS with 10 homers and 35 RBIs through 108 games. The Phillies crowd gives him a standing ovation. And it's not a coincidence, guys. To you fans out there, there are players who you can trigger in a really good way. Since then, in the 14 games since then, 370, 414 on base percentage, 117 OPS, 4 homers, 12 RBIs. Okay, not a coincidence. This game, every athletic endeavor at this level is about confidence. It's all confidence. And there's a positive, and for anybody that's ever done sports psychology, there's a physical component to emotions. And by that, I mean your body releases different chemicals when you're happy, sad, depressed, pressured, motivated, all those things. And as an athlete, I can speak from personal experience. In October, I was a different human being. And I felt different. And my emotions were different. And my adrenaline was different. And when I pitched in front of big crowds when I pitched in Yankee Stadium, I was different. The crowds create those things, home and away. I remember in 1993 when we were playing the Braves in the playoffs. This was the time of the politically incorrect tomahawk chop that the Atlanta fans were doing. It's kind of when it started. And I remember they were doing that in Game 5. And Terry Mulholland told me before that game, he said, think about this, man. You have a chance to go out there and stop 45,000 people from talking and being emotional. And it led to the 2001 quote when I said, or 2004, when I said, I can't think of anything more enjoyable than making 55,000 people from New York shut up. And that's a sign of respect, by the way, New York fans, always was. But we feed off this stuff, man. The good players do anyway. You know what? I'll say it, and you hear it here first, and I don't want to be first, but Aaron Boone's going to get fired, and that's going to suck because none of this is his fault. And every player in Yankee pinstripes and these guys know Aaron, and I promise you they care very deeply about this guy. He's the kind of guy that warrants that kind of emotion. Every one of them should feel like crap because it's their fault he's going to get fired, period. You couldn't ask for a better, more calming influence. I guarantee you there's no panic in his voice. But correct me if I'm wrong, but as a player, it always felt like Yankee fans wanted to see panic when they were losing. They didn't just want to panic. They wanted the organization to panic, right? You heard, I think earlier, what was it, last show, didn't we, John? We were talking about last show, trade Judge, trade Cole, blow it up. And it's like, no, number one. And you almost can't, number two. So if you can't fire the players, and firing anybody else would be meaningless to the field results, you got to fire the manager, the coaching staff. And unfortunately, I think that we're about to see that. And that sucks because it's not his fault.
Football is back. We kind of have a little false fall happening here in the Middle Tennessee area.
Get you every time, too.
Yeah. It's a lot like March Madness where you feel like spring, Augusta, and then all of a sudden it freezes again.
I went outside and threw the softball around with my daughter last night, and she was saying, Dad, it's so chilly out here. I need to go get a hoodie on. I said, let's not act rash. It's not that cold outside. And don't get too excited about this because that hoodie's coming right back off because it's about to be 97 next week.
It will. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick Network. Danny Kanell joins us, courtesy of Bet Online, betonline.net. To be specific, you can check out Bet Online for updated college football playoff win totals, conference, Heisman, and college football Week 1 lines. Danny, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
What's up, fellas? How's it going? Yeah, we didn't get that false fall down in South Florida. I'm still waiting on that one.
Yeah.
I was in New York City last night, though. It was a little bit colder up there. It was like 77. It was beautiful. It was perfect.
What do you make of the ACC adding Stanford, Cal, and SMU? What does it mean for the conference and for someone that played at Florida State? What do you think of the future of now the 18 programs?
Oh, fellas, how about the academic prowess? Can we just brag on that? Just look at the SAT scores that are applying to these universities. Look at our
student
GPAs,
athletes. Student athletes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's not talk about it. Let's just talk about the academic prowess that it adds to the conference because, it doesn't make any sense. I don't love it. Florida State obviously is one of the schools that voted against it as a North Carolina and Miami. NC State was the turncoat. They're the ones that caved and voted this thing through with the 4 schools that were going to hold out. I get it, though. I got to give, some credit to the ACC and the commissioner, Jim Phillips, because he's got to do something. This is the best of bad options. You're trying to survive in this rapidly shifting landscape. Notre Dame is clearly the best option, but it's not a reality right now. Where you're going to go after Oregon State and Washington State. That didn't make a lot of sense. UConn. So you're able to get these 3 teams, which it gives you some West Coast windows, which is going to be a nightmare to travel. Not so much for football and basketball, but for the non-revenue sports. And some of them, they'll figure that out. They'll make one West Coast trip. SMU, I actually think, is probably the best value here because SMU is like, we'll come. We don't even have to take any money. We just want to play with the big boys. And they're actually they have some tradition and history going back to the 80s with Eric Dickerson and when they were the Ponies. Yeah, the Pony Express. So I think they have a strong desire. Like Stanford and Cal, what is their desire? Do they even want to be competitive in football? I don't think so. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is all about money. And any way you can cut into that gap, that's about $40 million per school in the ACC versus the SEC and Big Ten, the greater chance you have of surviving, keeping Florida State, Clemson temporarily happy so they don't, force their way out. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't love it, but I get why it was done.
Danny, I watched quite a bit of your work last night in New York. Great job with the studio work on CBS Sports Network. Really enjoyed it. Saw you post-game after UConn, NC State, discussing Florida. And we've talked a lot about that game today. My biggest thing, and the thing that would discourage me the most if I'm a Gator fan, is they look poorly coached. And that's the one that's tough to get past in a game like that. It's one thing to go on the road and lose to a better team. It's another thing to look poorly coached in doing so. And to me, that's the way Florida looked last night. What did you make of that game?
Chad, I agree. I mean, it was just, if you're Billy Napier, you got to feel so defeated today. I mean, because I actually thought there were some bright spots. Like the one guy that we thought was going to be awful was Graham Mertz. He actually played pretty good. Like he made some nice throws, showed some mobility, but he was getting killed and running for his life. They had no run game. But the mental errors, like early in the game, they had an opportunity. There was the fourth down. They forced a punt. And on the punt, you have the illegal substitution. And then you let them extend the drive into the red zone, and they go on and score. And you saw penalties. You saw some missed execution too, a missed field goal, a chip shot that could have really, brought it to 7-6 early in the game. It was just everywhere you looked, it was pretty glaringly bad for the Gators. But I think like if you're a Gator fan and you're feeling down, and as somebody who backed the Gators to go over their 5.5 win total, I'm like, oh man, is that going to be a loser? I didn't think they would win that game. And I think you have to consider that you went against a really good opponent. Like Utah is physical. They are back-to-back Pac-12 champions. They're a perennial top 10, top 15 team. Like that is a really good program that is at one of the best environments, even though Florida trolled them and they got trolled right back, making fun of Rice Eccles. It is a tough environment at altitude. And is like, if you could take away, I got to give a ton of credit to Utah because I love the game plan from Andy Ludwig, their offensive coordinator, taking the shot early, because I'm sure you guys thought, every analyst that's watched football had to have the mindset, well, no Cam Rising, they're going to try to run the football. And sure enough, what do? Play action pass, take the shot over the top, leads to the quick, easy touchdown early. I thought that was a huge kind of opener that opened up the game, allowed some of that pressure to be alleviated off the Utah quarterbacks that were both playing. But yeah, it's going to be a rough week in Florida as they try to rebound from this one.
We'll talk a little more ACC, and we'll get into the biggest game of the week involving ACC versus SEC that you've got a lot of interest in.
Oh, they're in Nashville? Is that what you're talking about? Are you talking about, Chad? Are you talking about ACC? Is that the big game with Virginia?
Oh, yeah. Well, absolutely. The primetime game that we all know, that 11 a.m. Central kickoff between Tennessee and Virginia. No, I do want to talk about a primetime game, though, not the one that we're going to talk about later, but North Carolina, South Carolina. And my big question, Danny, is we know how great Drake May is. Is North Carolina's defense just going to be okay? Because if they're just okay, they could be a great team in the ACC. They were putrid a season ago. Do you think they've improved enough to where they can be a factor?
I don't know yet. I hope so, Chad, because it was bad. I mean, they were one of the worst in the country. It's almost one of those ones where it can't get that much worse. Like it just can't be that bad, or else Gene Chizik, as much as, Mac Brown is a loyal coach, he'll just have to make a change. It'll be, it's a results-driven business. He can just go in there and say, this isn't getting it done. I think they will be better. I think they'll be more balanced, too, offensively. But I mean, it was atrocious last year defensively. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for them to kind of pick up some momentum that they had early last year, because they need to forget about the last 4 games. The defense finally caught up to them. Drake May didn't play the role of Superman as much as he did the first 9 games of the season. And I think North Carolina is the favorite, a 2.5-point favorite. This is an opportunity for them to kind of take control early in the season against a team that I like. Shane Beamer, I love his culture that he's built, but he did lose some talent. Like he lost arguably his best offensive weapon in Jaheim Bell, who's playing for Florida State. Jordan Birch, probably the best defensive player, is now playing for Oregon. Like he lost some players there, and he's got an inconsistent quarterback in Spencer Rattler. Like this is your opportunity for North Carolina to kind of show that last year wasn't a fluke. They're going to continue to build on the Drake May era. So we had to see if the Tar Heels can do it. But you're right. It's all about the defense and whether they can improve or not.
Florida State and LSU, a game that shouldn't really impact both programs' chances to win the conference. I mean, we saw what happened last year with both. And ultimately, one wins, one loses. But which team does this game affect the most down the road, Danny? Florida State or LSU? Which impact is more significant?
I'll say, it was interesting because I think the narrative around this game has been you can lose this game and you can still, reach all your goals.
Yeah.
But do you guys know in the college football playoff, no team has lost in week 1 and made it to the playoffs? Now, that might not be, you might not say, well, that's not the goal for Florida State. They just want to win the ACC or SEC, if the LSU,
right.
But I mean, LSU, I think they want to get to the playoff. So I do think either one of these teams could buck that trend. I think it's more important for Florida State. And here's why, because if Florida State loses, the margin for error rapidly, it gets infinitesimal. You have to go on the road to Clemson. Like, you have to beat them and probably beat them twice potentially to get to the playoff. Now, yes, you could still win the ACC if you lost at Clemson on September 23rd, but then you'd be a 2-loss team. You'd get a New Year's 6 invite. Like, it'd be nice. But I promise you, Jordan Travis, Jared Verse didn't come back to Florida State to just get a New Year's 6 invite. Like, these guys want to do something special. And if LSU loses the game, I do think if LSU lost the game and lost another game in the regular season, but somehow beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, I think they'd be the first 2-loss team in the playoffs. So I think that it's because of the margin error, because of the conference, and the reputation that the SEC has. I think it means more for Florida State, and Florida State's at home, or pseudo home.
Yeah.
They're in Orlando, but it's probably going to be 65-70% Florida State fans, one of which will be me and my family as fans in that stadium. But yeah, I think it probably means a little bit more for Florida State.
And to reach those goals, you've got to have great quarterback play. Jordan Travis at Florida State. Danny, what is the ceiling for Jordan Travis this season and what he can do for the Seminoles?
So I absolutely adore him. I mean, he is a phenomenal young man. He's got all the intangibles you would look for. And the one of my favorite aspects about him is how much he's improved. Because I had my doubts. Every Florida State fan did early in his career. He's splitting time with Mackenzie Milton. He didn't look very polished. But you know what we allowed him to do? When I say we, I mean Mike Norvell and the coaching staff. They allowed him to improve. Like, he has gotten better and better and better. And too many times, we as analysts and coaches as well, if a quarterback struggles somewhat, we're like, bench him, get him out of there. We got to make a move. We got to find the guy who fits and can make us win now. He took his lumps, and starting at the end of the 21 season, like the back end there, about 4 or 5 games left in the season, he started to play really well. And then he carried over to last year. And I would expect more of the same this year for him to improve. And he has weapons all over the place. Johnny Wilson is 6'7". That was his favorite target. 6'7" at wide receiver on the outside. They bring Keon Coleman in from Michigan State, who was a late transfer, who Mel Kiper just moved to number 2 on his big board behind Marvin Harrison Jr. He is a stud. Jaheim Bell, I mentioned, at tight end. You got your running back. You got a veteran offensive line. You got an offensive, a play caller in Mike Norvell, who is really innovative and finds weaknesses. I think the ceiling for Jordan Travis is Heisman Trophy and taking this team to the playoff. I think that's the ceiling for Jordan Travis this season. The reason I don't say national title is I think there's 4 teams that really kind of separate themselves with the talent that's on the field. And I think it's Georgia, obviously. I think it's Bama. I think it's Michigan, who's won back-to-back. And I think it's Ohio State. Like, they have the most 4 and 5 stars, the most first and second and third round NFL talent on their rosters. And I thought last year was an example of TCU showing, hey, a lot of teams can get to the playoff, which I would put Florida State in that category. But how many can win 2 games against really good opponents? And I think that is such a select, small group of schools that can actually do that. That I don't want to go all in and say Florida State can win the title. Maybe they will, and that'd be awesome. And it probably would be because Jordan Travis would be, just lighting it up, and he might. But I think along the offensive and defensive line, you might get pushed around a little bit, trying to win 2 games against schools of that caliber.
Danny, are you ready to put Clemson on upset alert at Duke on Labor Day night?
Yeah, my boy Dusty, who I do the radio show with, he's calling that game with Dave Pash and Tom Luganville, and he's been watching some film. And I watched a lot of film with Riley Leonard last year. He is special. And you guys know, like, I know you guys like the SEC, and there's some tough environments there, but nobody goes into Wallace Wade Stadium and walks away unscathed. I mean, that place is just
rowdy.
Those Dukes. You get the Cameron crazies out there, and it's just nuts.
They're going to be pumped. They don't have to go to class that day.
Yeah.
Yes, I kid. But I do. Mike Elko is a defensive coach. Like, we think it's going to work with Garrett Riley. I do. Cade Klubnik is still a young quarterback. Riley Leonard is athletic. You guys need to check out his 360 slam dunk online. Like, just Google it. Do Riley Leonard dunk, and it comes up on Twitter. In a game, 360 dunk. He is a freak athlete that can throw it. He can run. That, to me, would give Dabo Swinney a little bit of nightmares, because I think he could be the kind of X factor that keeps that game competitive. And then if it's a fourth quarter game and, you got a young quarterback in Cade Klubnik, you're supposed to win. I like Duke with the points as the home dog. Outright upset, I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Danny Kanell, betonline.net is the site you can go to make all your parlays, your predictions for the season, week 1 lines, and more. I'm going to bet Duke just based on the 360 dunk I just saw. Like,
it's insane,
recency
right?
bias. Yes, dunk contest galore. Chad's looking it up now too. Hey, man, enjoy the weekend. Football is back. We're thrilled for it, and here's hoping that some of these games that look like blowouts on paper actually give us some nail biters down to the wire tomorrow.
Thanks, Danny.
You got it, Jonathan. Chad, thanks so much. I know this weekend's not the best, but wait till you guys see week 2 slate. Week 2 is phenomenal.
Stacked.
So enjoy it all, though.
Thank you, Danny. Danny Kanell, betonline.net. Always great to catch up with him. Coming up, we've got further headlines of the day, the dumpster fire of the week in sports, and plenty of discussion about the top college football games coming up your way tomorrow. Hot Mic rolls on.
Davey Hudson of OutKick here. We are at SEC Media Days 2023 in Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to go talk to some players, see what they have to say. What's the best purchase you've made from an NIL deal so far?
Tag watch right here.
Far.
Best purchase? I probably just give it back to my son for real. That's probably my best purchase every time.
Man, pay my truck off. Definitely.
A house. My wife and I bought a house, so that's been huge. Being able to save that money up and buy a house.
This chain here.
The best purchase? I'd probably say helping my mom out with school.
Ooh, the best purchase? Probably the shoes. The shoes I got on right now.
The best purchase I made, well, the best NIL deal I've had is free steaks from Marksbury Farms, so keep me fed and beefed up.
With it?
Ooh, purchase? Probably a new golf bag. Or recently I played TPC Sawgrass this past weekend, and that was from I used that money from a deal I made, so that's up there too.
Probably getting my sister through college, helping my family out a lot. That's probably my best purchase I've done.
Best purchase? Probably my my mom and dad anniversary gift.
The best purchase I've made? I got a yoga mat the other day, and that's helped me a lot. Just flexibility and everything like that. So probably that.
Best purchase? My smile.
Best purchase? I would say my best purchase was having my school supply drive.
Landon, what is your favorite sports movie of all time?
Remember the Titans for sure. Sport movie, I say Love and Basketball. That's my favorite.
Got to be Remember the Titans for sure.
Remember the Titans. I mean, it's top movie ever.
Probably Longest Yard.
I'd probably say Like Mike with Bow Wow.
Yeah.
My favorite sports movie, Remember the Titans.
Air Bud.
Perfect answer, actually.
I really don't know. I don't have one.
Movie? I haven't seen many, but does Sandlot count?
Favorite sports movie of all time? Probably Coach Carter.
Ooh, sports movie. Probably The Express.
Happy Gilmore.
The Little Giants.
Amari, what was your most favorite sports movie growing up?
Remember the Titans.
Barbie or Oppenheimer? Which one are you and the boys seeing first?
I don't know the other one, but definitely not Barbie.
Oppenheimer, gotta be. I'm not against the Barbie movie though. I tried to recommend it. I was shut down pretty fast.
Oppenheimer. Come on now. You don't need to ask me that question. Oppenheimer looks good though.
What's Oppenheimer?
It's a movie about the atomic bomb. It's the big thing that comes out this Thursday.
Yeah, probably that.
Oppenheimer.
Wait, what was the other one?
Barbie or Oppenheimer?
The opposite of Barbie. The opposite of Barbie. Yeah, so I'm not.
We're going to see Oppenheimer and then follow with Barbie.
Solid choice.
I don't even know what Oppenheimer is. I don't want to see Barbie, though.
Oppenheimer, 100%.
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.
Say a little bit louder.
Oppenheimer.
Oh, we're going to watch both of them. Maybe on the same night, but we'll probably watch. I think you got to watch Barbie first, just so you're not, Oppenheimer might be a little too intense, you know what I'm saying? So you warm up with Barbie and then you go to the Oppenheimer.
The second one. Oppenheimer.
Barbie or Oppenheimer? Which one are you and the boys seeing first?
Barbie.
Sixth and Peabody, our location. Happy Friday to you. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. D-Hop Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hopping here in Music City. Hopefully it is where you are as football has returned. Chad, baseball in full swing. Ronald Acuna, man. He has started the 60-30 club. 60 stolen bases, 30 homers. They accomplished that yesterday, and he did so in a game after a morning where he was married. Yeah. Not a bad day for Acuna.
No,
the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, it was funny. Brian Snitker was asked afterward, and he said, I don't know what's going on. I'm glad I don't know half the stuff that goes on with the team because they went out
whatever he's doing, let him do it.
Yeah, around L.A., and he had a wedding service. I know he's got 2 young children with this woman that he married yesterday, so congrats to Ronald Acuna and his new bride. And congrats to Ronald Acuna on making history. I went to bed last night. This game was 7-1 Braves. And I said to myself, the Dodgers had Jason Hayward on second, and I think maybe Freddie Freeman on first that just walked with no outs in the 5th or 6th. And I said, this will be a 1-run game or very close by the end because the Dodgers will score some runs. Braves won 8-7 when I woke up and saw it.
Well,
this is a powerhouse series in the regular season, a 4-game series everyone wants to watch because right now these are clearly the 2 best teams in the National League.
With the 2 best players.
Yep.
Mookie Betts and
3.
Acuna.
3. When you count Freddie Freeman, who's also in the MVP race.
Betts and Acuna last night combined for 3 homers and 8 RBI. And they're apparently neck and neck in the NL MVP chase. I don't know how you set this record and you become the first 60-30 player and you don't win MVP.
Well, it's also
with the consistency there. Is he being knocked because of the new rules in stolen bases?
Maybe. I think he's going to win it.
Not
first
knocked,
off.
but
I think he's going to win it. But the fact that he's not a runaway, I see what you're saying. It's not September when this happened. That's the crazy thing. I mean, as it happened, he said he has made history, and it is August.
We have a month
at this point. I mean, it is not. We're not yet into September. A whole month left in the season is just crazy. I was trying to look up another just insane stat on Braves home run hitting. I think the number is 5 out of 11. 5 of the top 11 home run hitters, or maybe
are playing,
are
in this?
Braves in the National League.
Oh, I thought you meant in.
They have like 5 of the top 10 or 7 of the top 12 or something in home runs in the National League,
which is remarkable considering their lineup. Like
it's crazy.
3 years ago, you wouldn't have predicted this.
No,
the power. And that's with Freeman, by the way.
Acuna is, I mean, he's an all-timer.
What's his contract?
He is a 5-tool guy.
What's his contract like?
That's incredible.
At any point, do these guys just look at their deal and be like, hey, it's time to renegotiate based on production?
I think they'll probably do something.
They're such a tight-knit clubhouse. You know?
Yeah. Well, they have it's kind of like heat culture in Miami.
Yeah.
They don't do load management with Miami. They do none of that. The Braves do not take days off. They only miss. Ozzie Albies had not missed a single start a single game until he hurt his hamstring, and he's had to sit from that point on. But, I mean, they're doing this without Ozzie Albies right now. It's an incredible lineup. And this happens to come on Labor Day weekend when our focus turns to football. But if you are a baseball fan, just keep one eye peeked on Braves-Dodgers all weekend, because it is going to be a slugfest between these two. Both remarkable teams.
It wasn't a slugfest. It was a slapfest for Tyreek Hill, allegedly, at the marina back in, June, May, with the alleged assault. Tyreek Hill involved with this at a marina. He is not going to face discipline from the NFL. The NFL has confirmed that. And the guy who was slapped here did not press charges. In fact, both attorneys for each party released a joint statement saying that they had resolved their differences. So nothing came of this, even though Tyreek Hill was vocal and said, I was dumb. He told that to the media this offseason. It was stupid, boneheaded, I believe, is what he said. And now he's been like, hey, I'm not really focused on a suspension. I don't expect to. And he doesn't hear. He's not going to miss any time on the field for the Miami Dolphins. That's great news for them.
Yeah, he paid them off.
As they crank up. Well,
that was my first thing. We've resolved our differences in that Tyreek's attorney got with our attorney and he paid him.
Legally, that it doesn't have to be a settlement like this where the NFL reacts the way they did.
Yeah.
It could be conduct detrimental to the league, and they can still
the league could have done whatever they wanted.
You. No discipline.
I mean, the league just said, whatever. A slap fight that was resolved peacefully. They're not going to press charges or cooperate.
I mean,
whatever happened, happened.
I tend to agree, but normally they do something. It's a fine or there's something.
Well, especially with someone with a track record like Tyreek Hill.
Right.
So,
no dumpster fire there.
Someone got paid.
But it is time for our dumpster fire of the Sports Week. Davey Hudson also joins us in studio for this. And Davey, the theme is we picked the big failure of the week.
The biggest dumpster fire. They have problems going on. You can look at it on multiple fronts, but
there's plenty to choose from.
Doesn't have to be sports too, right?
We can do wide open.
It doesn't have to be. I think for today, we all have something that is somewhat related to sports.
Yes. Okay. I'll kick it off with just my dumpster fire of the week. The holdouts with DirecTV and Nexstar, and you also have going on right now Disney with Charter and Spectrum, which Florida fans and college football fans found out the hard way. Right as the game was supposed to kick off, they cut away, and
My
you have
mom
nothing
and
but
dad
a message happened right here. The Withrows couldn't watch this game last night.
Pathetic.
In Florida, you can't stream it on an app. You couldn't get on your phone and watch this. It's posturing. It's a maneuver that was, smart by Disney, I guess, whenever they choose to pull the plug on the game last night with Utah and Florida. But isn't it interesting that they choose to do it when football is being played? Preseason games in local markets for Nexstar, which here happens to be ABC, you can't watch the preseason matchup in the NFL. And the vast majority of viewers found out that this dispute was going on when football was kicking off. If you want to see the popularity of football across the country, NFL, SEC, Power 5, Big Ten, whatever, just find out about the cable disputes whenever football is about to tee it up. Fix this. Get this done instead of pointing fingers at each other saying they're to blame in an era where we're headed into a streaming market more so than the cable providers, with household after household, individual after individual, cutting the cord. This is just another reason to do so. I hand out the dumpster fire to the negotiations between all of these companies combined. It's embarrassing.
Well said. Totally pathetic. Inexcusable. Figure it out. Get it together, or everyone's going to be on streamers nonstop. My dumpster fire of the week goes to the Florida Gators football coaching staff. 9 penalties in the game. Had 2 dudes on the field with the number 3 on special teams. One might ask themselves, how does a highly paid collegiate Southeastern Conference football staff allow something like that to happen that later goes on to lead to an 80-yard touchdown drive because the 5-yard penalty that led to an automatic first down after the pickup? Well, how that happens is instead of having a special teams coordinator to blame You have something called a game changer coordinator, who is Chris Couch, who was in charge of special teams at the previous stop of Billy Napier. Look, hire a special teams coordinator. Get it together. Billy Napier's got talent on this Florida roster. I thought Graham Mertz was fine in this game. Not great, but he was fine. He played well enough, if he had some help, to maybe go there and win the game. You were not good enough, Billy Napier. That's the issue with this game. My dumpster fire of the week, and I think Gator fans will agree with me on this, that Florida Gators coaching staff led by Billy Napier better figure it out, or this dumpster fire of the week will be an inferno that will completely burn them up for the entire year. So figure it out now, or this thing's going to be ugly quickly.
Guys, I'd like to add on a couple of things. First, a PSA. So as it relates to Hutton talking about the negotiations between Charter, which is Spectrum, and then Disney, I was impacted by this.
You had this issue too, right?
Yes, granted, I am still mooching off my parents when it comes to their cable
You were still affected, Davey.
But what makes it even worse, and I just want you all to know this, like ABC's included in this, even if you don't have, or let's say even if you have Spectrum and you are signed up through ESPN Plus through Verizon or some other company, it's still linked into the back end of the ESPN app. So it doesn't matter if you have ESPN Plus and you're still paying for Spectrum. You're not going to be able to watch anything until they get this settled. But tons of games this weekend. We'll see how that continues to go off of. The main thing that set that up, though, is everybody getting upset about Florida, which you mentioned, Chad. I agree with you. If I am the Gators and I'm a fan, I'm at the point. I'm already calling for it. Oh, you got something, Hut?
Well, just think about it from this perspective. Chad, if this were Tennessee, Florida, right, and you have the graphic that popped up on your screen, Davey, you could voice your complaint here as well. What do you do at that point? You're set for kickoff. You've probably had a pregame. You may have friends over. And then right at kickoff, you have that announcement after pregame has been aired and you've seen the field and everything's going on.
I was calling other people to see if they would let me use their YouTube TV login so I could watch the game. And some people aren't going to have that. I was able to get in, but the person, I love them dearly, but trying to just communicate, getting them to use the activation code was a nightmare in and of itself.
If you don't make this thing as easy as possible, exactly what Davey's talking about right now, you are just encouraging people to rip off your business. They're just going to go to friends that have a login for whatever.
They're trying,
Because if you don't give me convenience, if I'm just going to blindly give you $15 a month or whatever it is for a streaming service, and it doesn't work for me, I'm stealing from you.
Yeah.
Davey's going to steal from you as he did last night with a friend subscription. Like, that's what you're encouraging us to do if we're going to force us to watch a game, not through what we're paying you to see, but through other means, then forever now we're going to steal from you.
I'm not one to stand up for cable companies because I know they've screwed people over ad nauseum in the past, but this is on Disney. I mean, Disney was the one who ultimately made this call, but we'll see how it unfolds this weekend.
They're doing it because they're saying it's on them, so we had to do this to get their attention.
Everything looks as though this is Charter/Spectrum's fault, but
yeah, they're the ones that are going to get the calls.
Yeah. And as it relates to Florida,
Bob Iger will receive no calls.
I agree with you guys, but now's the time. Like, you got to pull the plug on the Billy Napier project. It's not going to get better whenever these coaching mistakes are happening. A good example is it's not as bad of a loss because it was a ranked team, but as far as the coaching malpractice that you saw, I would equate it to Tennessee losing to Georgia State year 2 in Jeremy Pruitt era.
I would not go that far.
I will go that far. So
that was at
not
home
if you lose, it's how you lose. That's my
it was
motto.
bad. Hey, and I've teased it, but it's going to happen. Urban Meyer calls for him to come back to Florida will happen.
They don't want Urban.
Sooner rather than later.
They want the old ball coach to come down from his office and just draw up some cool plays for them to watch.
Jerry Jones may have some calls for Mike McCarthy if the season starts slow for the Dallas Cowboys.
He might. And last Friday, the trade happened for Trey Lance, and really where my dumpster fire comes from as it relates to the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones, they're never going to get over the hump. Jerry's making these moves, and at first you're like, okay, that's cool if everyone's in agreement that we're making this as a unit. But no, Jerry Jones is just like, I'm just going to go out and get Trey Lance. Mike McCarthy, other personnel within the building did not know this happened until after the trade had already been executed. And so, the quarterbacks that were already in that room weren't happy. We know Dak Prescott wasn't glad to see Will Grier go. I'm glad he was able to have that awesome final preseason game and put that on tape after knowing that this was his final game with the team. And you could say this is a minor thing, but this is just a bigger problem that we've seen time and time again. I'm calling it this year. The Cowboys aren't making the playoffs. They're finishing 4th in the NFC East.
Wow.
They're not getting it done. I think moving on from Kellen Moore, Schottenheimer's not going to be the answer there, even if they kind of are maneuvering how they're dealing with the plays, whether it's McCarthy, Schottenheimer. This is going to be a bad year for the Dallas Cowboys. And Kellen Moore, watch out for the Chargers. Justin Herbert, I could see him getting over 50 passing touchdowns this season.
Well, it's on McCarthy now.
Yep.
That's clear. Schottenheimer can come in and be the offensive coordinator. We're back to McCarthy's offense. Hands down. And I don't think Dallas is finishing last. I think we could see 3 teams out of that division yet again in the postseason. Coming up, headlines of the day as we reach the final hour. We'll get you to the college football weekend. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And what he reposted
he did
and then how he did it.
He bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here of the Friday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. Over the next hour, we get you to the weekend. We get you to Labor Day weekend. We get you to the college football weekend. Chad, coming up, we have your top 10 games for all of us to pay attention to, the games we should be watching across the slate. I'm assuming at least a couple of those could be tonight. Potentially one could be tonight.
It is a celebration, Hutton, that we'll have coming up. And yes, they could be.
Okay.
One of them could be tonight.
And you're counting Monday
Only
as well?
one of them.
You're counting Monday as well?
I am.
Okay, good. Plenty to choose from there. At least I think so.
Mm-hmm.
This is also the one college football weekend where I don't get pissed off that the marching bands are taking too much time on the field for halftime. Because I see everything for the first time again, and then it's very repetitive. You see it every halftime from then on out, and they have to get their time in.
The only halftime, to me, this is the halftime complaint, very valid. You know, the halftimes in college taking too long. I have been monitoring the no stopping the clock on first downs, which is a new college football rule. That is getting it going a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Not stopping on every first down, which is now a little bit more like the NFL with that. The marching band and long halftime kills you when you're at a game. That's where I notice it.
You need it at a game if you're in line.
If I can pause, like if I'm watching a game, and if I'm watching my alma mater, Tennessee, play, when it gets to halftime, I've got it recorded, or I pause it, and I can go to another game, and then I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching other games, and I'll flip back, and, it hadn't started yet. Okay, I'm going back to this other game and watching that. When you're there, Hutton, and we've been to a number of games over the past few years with our OutKick the Tailgate show, and we were at Tennessee, Alabama. Does it not feel like an eternity?
It does.
I mean, you can go to the bathroom, go to the concession, and come sit down and get back to your seat, and there's still like 9 minutes left.
You can wait in line for a while, and you feel like you have to rush. You feel like you want to go to the front and pay someone to buy whatever you want.
And if you don't want to go stand in line, it's equally as awful to stand in line for something during the halftime as it is to just sit in your seat and stare at a field for 25 minutes.
Well, you're staring at the performance that you know is.
I'm not even watching the performance. I'm trying to get a signal on my phone, and I'm unsuccessfully.
That's it.
Right? I'm trying to get text through.
You want to see scores.
Trying to see scores, not doing that. And you're just staring at the field and the clock, hoping for the second half to start.
The ACC has voted to expand by 3. They now have 18 starting in 2024. Cal, Stanford, and SMU will be added to the ACC starting next season. Just briefly, Chad, we touched on this, but in terms of stability, I don't know why Cal and Stanford would take significantly less in media rights money over a duration of time, and why SMU would go 7 years without taking a media rights check if you don't have some type of assurance that the ESPN is not going to let the ACC go away, like we just saw with the Pac-12. I don't know why you shift and take less when you could go independent for a couple of years and let the dust settle. Do you take it that way or no?
Yeah, I think it's weird. I also think there's something going on where there's going to be a reshuffling of the deck, and they all know it.
With Florida State, Clemson, or
no?
elsewhere?
I think just everyone. There's not going to be conferences the way I've talked about.
But why would you take $7 to $10 million then when you can just?
They want to jump on board, so they're in the protected class. If that makes sense.
So it would be the ACC
well,
based
if they
on the
just
relationship.
say we're going to take all the power conferences, right? Pac-12's no more. So now there's a Power 4.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm in the Power 4.
You're in the 4.
So now I'm in whatever regional deal they work out or new conferences.
You're in the 4 that have a heavy vote.
Right. The game of musical chairs is going, and I found a seat.
Yeah.
So I'll take it on the front end and not make the media rights money, but yet I'm there when the future of college football inevitably happens, and they reshuffle everything, and now we're left with a home. That's my take.
The other thing, too, to just keep an eye on with SMU doing what they're doing, UConn. UConn's been mentioned a lot to the Big 12. The commissioner wants them there. But having seen what SMU just did, when they weren't even brought up for a vote 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks later, they're in. They flip NC State. If you want to be a part of the haves, there's a jump that must be made there. And SMU did it. They're the big winners, not Cal or Stanford.
Well, they're a winner, but the ACC's not a winner either. I mean, just from public perception, no one is doing backflips over these 3 teams joining the conference. I mean, Danny Kanell, who's the biggest ACC homer on the planet, and he'll tell you that, is joking about, well, our SAT scores just got better.
However,
not sure about football, but we got a lot better SAT scores.
I'm not saying it's great, but the Pac-12 had a chance to add San Diego State if they wanted to, and they kind of laughed them out of the room.
Well, I mean, come on. No, we all know the loser in this.
But
it's the one that no longer exists.
Right, but they laughed. But I'm saying that at least the ACC added teams.
Yeah.
Added programs.
No, they did.
It may not be a victory, but it's not a loss.
I don't hate it for the ACC. I just think it's whatever. No one's going to get excited about those programs from a football standpoint or basketball standpoint. I mean, suddenly now, Cal versus Boston College. We getting excited about that in basketball?
No.
I mean, think about some of these matchups.
You know who's excited about ESPN? ESPN has more programming now.
When Stanford
that will be on ESPN Plus. You call it the Plus.
When Stanford visits Clemson in hoops, are we going to go nuts over that one? I mean, ACC Network's going to double their ratings. 75 people might watch that game. It's just not all of that stuff. When you think about the other sports, is not going to get you excited. You're right, though. It's not an L.
It's not a loss
like the Pac-12 took.
Yeah,
definitely a win for SMU. And I think for Cal and Stanford, it's just neutral survival. We live to fight another day.
I think that from
if
the
you're
leadership,
them, that's what you're thinking. We're not overly pumped about it, but we live to fight another day. And if we can force the issue and get away from these conferences and move to a college football super pact, at some point, maybe we'll have a seat at the table.
Chad, no changes in terms of the pitch clock for Major League Baseball in the postseason. They've announced that. This is something we've talked about with Schilling and with Michael McHenry about the mechanics. The
players
wanted more time going into the postseason. That's not going to happen here.
Good.
They're keeping it exactly as is.
Good.
And that's great for the broadcast.
Look, and also it's just not. It's not conducive to play 162 games with one set of rules, then change them for the playoffs.
Well, the players, I don't think they're exaggerating this. The breaks in between in between innings are longer, briefly longer, like 30 to 45 seconds, and I think or there's a duration of time that's different based on the broadcast. And I think they were trying to factor that into the time they actually had to pitch. It's like, hey, if you're taking more time during the inning here, why can't we have more time in between pitches?
Well, I've got an easy response to that. If I'm Major League Baseball, I'd say, well, we're taking the extra time for advertisers.
They made the right call.
That help pay your salaries that are through the roof right now, exorbitant numbers. And we're not going to then add more time on top of that and change the rules. It's a very simple answer to players who complain about this. That's why we don't do it. I mean, I understand they don't want something overly punitive in a playoff game to decide a series because of a pitch clock violation. I get that, but you've played under these rules all year. So if you violate them in the playoff game, it's the same as you violate them in the regular season. I'm all for Major League Baseball with this move.
Chad, Mike Evans, superstar in Tampa, heading into the final season of the 5-year contract that he signed back in 2018. Evans has been looking for a contract extension, and as of right now, the two sides, Tampa and Evans, they have not found that agreement. So Evans' agent released a statement saying his client is cutting off contract talks if no deal is reached by the day before the start of the Buccaneers season. So they've got another week here, but not for long. And by and large, this is when players cut off contract negotiations and talks, right before the season. Things can go on behind the scenes between the GM and the agent, but it's not like we hear a ton of chatter about player X and team X. We know it's a final season, and they get asked if they want to be back, but it's not on a weekly basis. Evans has been phenomenal. 1,000-yard seasons, extremely consistent. 10,000, nearly 11,000 receiving yards, over 80 touchdowns for his career. A bit different, though, with Baker Mayfield starting for Tampa
he's in
Bay.
a tough spot because he's going from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield throwing him passes. That's not what you want to be in.
And he's 30 years old this year. He's on the other side of that, and the investment that needs to be made. We've seen other teams choose not to invest in the older receivers because they can go get guys on their rookie contract. Evans is different, though. He is vastly underrated when we bring up top receivers in the NFL. the Packers trade away Devontae Adams. We saw the same thing with Julio Jones in Atlanta. Andre Johnson towards the end of his career as well. The list continues. Evans is next up in terms of investment made. You can hit us up on social. Join us in the chat with Chad right now on YouTube. Green Bay and Miami were willing to pay Jonathan Taylor top dollar. At least that's the report from Pro Football Talk. They were willing to make him among the highest paid running backs across the NFL. That means he would be somewhere in the range of $16 million, which is Christian McCaffrey. Henry's making $14. And if you look at Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, they're making $11 to $12 million this season. That's probably, my guess, where Miami was willing to take it. The franchise tag / the sweetening of the pot, Miami and Green Bay. But in this case, you also had to pay Indy, and Indy held the cards. They turned down the trade options, and Taylor remains on PUP. He's not injured. He can say his ankle still is sore or hurt, but he's not hurt following that surgery back in January.
And any chance now that they had of which was a small chance to begin with, of repairing their relationship in Indy with Jonathan Taylor is out the window now. Because now not only is it, I don't like what Jim Irsay said, I don't like him, you cost me this much money in a contract because you wouldn't take their offer. So you are messing with my money now on the other end because you wouldn't take whatever the trade offer was. Well within Indy's rights, by the way. If they're not offering enough, within their rights.
They deserve some return.
For sure, yeah. And but it's not going to make Jonathan Taylor feel any better about the situation. He hates them even more now.
Chad, it's not hard to make Keith Olbermann look like an idiot on social.
This guy, man, it's sad to think about our childhood of watching SportsCenter and Keith
Eating cereal
was.
And
I love watching Keith Olbermann and Dan Patrick on SportsCenter.
Yeah. Anyway, you watch the replays.
Well, who knew that the guy would just completely lose his mind?
He's a loon.
Yeah, he's a loon.
He's a
Best
loon.
way to describe him.
Riley Gaines took him down on social, where she was touting the governor in Nebraska, a famous women's rights supporter, signing a women's Bill of Rights, and she retweeted this and said, "Defining woman equals ridiculous to the state senator Megan Hunt. Remember that election time, Nebraskans." Well, Olbermann responds to that tweet, that post, and says to Riley, "Can you just address the reality and move past it? You sucked at swimming. That's why you lost." Of course, she tied with Leah Thomas for the championship, and they sent the trophy home with Leah Thomas for the photo opportunity. Ridiculous. Sucked at swimming, and when she's in the heat for the national championship against a man.
Well, and are you just first off, huge L for Keith Olbermann, because I know Riley responded to this and others, and it's just he's not followed up with anything. I think maybe even Keith Olbermann knows he probably lost this one, and he's not going to respond with anything else.
I don't think he ever realizes that.
But if you're just going through Twitter and finding people that you disagree with on X or on whatever platform you're on, and you just say ridiculous things to them that aren't true, this is what makes me mad about the current state of social media in particular, right? There are thousands of people who think Keith Olbermann owned Riley Gaines right there. Think about that. There are a lot of people who follow Keith Olbermann that agree with pretty much everything he says, that thinks, man, Keith, you tell her she's exploiting all of this for her own good and she's doing that and you just won. They don't even know the facts. It's not even true. She didn't lose. She's a great swimmer. She's maybe the best in the history of the University of Kentucky.
Yeah, but most decorated.
But facts don't matter to Keith Olbermann and people that think that he won that argument with that one tweet. Since then, Riley and others have completely taken him down. He looks like a loon to most sane people. But I just hate the fact that I see that. I mean, if I ever get into a Twitter spat with someone, there will be people who like really dumb things said to me that aren't true. And I'm thinking, it doesn't matter what they say. If they don't like you, they're going to agree with something that's not factual about you.
Yeah, your
and
opinion
side with
matters
the
as
other
long
person.
as it's in the opinion of the person that's reading or
I
hearing
just really
it.
want to get back to everyone being a third-party arbiter of an argument and look at it through clear lenses and actually decide, okay, this person makes a better point or this person won this argument. Because Keith Olbermann's crazy.
You sucked at swimming.
And there's nothing that he said
and
that's
dominated
factual.
in the pool. And the idea that she makes it all the way to the championship and she sucks at swimming is ridiculous.
It makes no sense, and it's
dumb
false.
even for him with
But
some dumb takes.
It's fake, right?
No
Like,
doubt.
I mean, especially Keith Olbermann wants to talk about, people perpetuating lies and doing that. What are you doing?
Well,
you're saying something about a woman who is a good swimmer, the best in her school's history, that didn't lose. But you get my broader issue here, is that someone read Keith Olbermann's thing. Not just someone. Let's not be naive. Probably, I don't know how many followers Keith Olbermann has, but thousands of people saw that and said, you tell him, Keith.
Because they don't know about her history.
You tell her, you're right, she's wrong. And I'm thinking, God, we're just so stupid as a human race right now. In America, we are so damn stupid. And that Keith Olbermann tweet is an example of it. And everyone who liked it, who thought he was actually in the right, it's just another example of stupidity.
It's like arguing biological men in the pool with one of the more decorated swimmers in the women's sport.
It's just
and then tying that person,
stupid.
and then Keith Olbermann saying that Riley sucked at swimming.
And by the way, Riley won the argument. So there you go. That's a fact. That's objective. That is not subjective.
Also a fact. Chad's got the top 10 games of the college football weekend you must watch.
This
That's
is also
next
objective.
on Hot Mic.
GOP presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy thinks that all voters should be able to pass a civics test, so I'm here on Broadway to see how we're doing. Can you name 3 cabinet positions?
Oh, Secretary of State.
Yep.
Secretary of Labor.
Yep.
And we'll go the Secretary of Education.
Correct. What is the capital of Tennessee?
That one, I have no idea. Tallahassee.
Tallahassee.
No, that's Florida.
That's Florida.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
No.
Do you know the capital of Tennessee?
What the hell? These people don't even like me.
All right, I'll give you a hint. You're standing in it. How many U.S. senators are there?
Way too many.
Well, they're way too old, I'll tell you that.
Not enough to do the job right, that's for sure.
If something bad happens to the president, who takes over?
The vice president.
Who is our vice president right now?
What does it start with? What's the first letter start with?
K.
Not sure. I don't know.
Okay. When was the Constitution written?
1976.
1787. How many amendments does the Constitution have?
32.
27. How many U.S. senators are there?
Damn. More than 50.
That's true, yes.
Because there's 50 states. There you go.
And how many senators are from each state?
2.
So how many is that?
100.
There you go. It's just basic math. You got it.
I have to really think.
What ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
Pacific?
East Coast.
Atlantic, then.
There you go. If something bad happens to the president and the vice president, who takes over?
First one up from Congress?
And who is that?
Some old man.
Do you know what ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
Pacific?
Atlantic, sorry. Wait. Atlantic. What is the capital of Tennessee? Nashville. It's Nashville, guys. How many years do we elect a senator for?
4.
6. What about a congressman?
That's 4.
2.
It's just a trick question. So.
Before he was president, Eisenhower was a general in what war?
World War II. He commanded Operation Overlord and D-Day invasion.
Correct. Okay. When was the Constitution written? Before that.
1854.
Before that.
1818.
Before that.
1777.
After that.
1789.
Before that.
1784.
After that.
1785.
After that.
1786.
After that.
1777.
After that. You were so close.
1778.
No.
Kanye West, Kanye 2024, big time. I wrote him in West Virginia, put him on the ballot.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? So proudly we hail. So.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Happy Labor Day weekend to you. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow here. Across YouTube, you can join us in the chat live each day, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Chad is there live with you currently, pounding away.
It's been a good chat. Good chat so far today.
A lot of argument?
No, not a lot. It doesn't get
Royce
sometimes
isn't
gets
there?
a little bit heated. But Royce is like a real binge and purge type chatter.
Yeah.
Comes in with about 17 straight posts and then kind of disappears after that.
He's like a bot, but real.
But he's very much real. He is real and he's spectacular.
It is. It's real that college football is in full swing starting tomorrow. Full slate, wall to wall. Chad and I will both be at games this weekend. I'm planning on going to Tuscaloosa.
Nice
check out Bama.
to see your alma mater.
Yeah, and I will see an actual depth chart. I will see 11 players, believe it or not, start for Alabama, Chad.
Well, it's amazing how they wouldn't put a depth chart out, or Nick Saban wouldn't, yet Chris Lowe magically learned
knows.
the starting quarterback of the game.
Is it that difficult, though, to figure out who it would be? I mean it shouldn't be, right?
Even Nick Saban said, the players know who's playing and who's starting, but I don't want them to publicly know. I don't want you to know, because then people will talk about it. Very weird.
That game will not be on Withrow's top games of the college football weekend, Alabama against Middle Tennessee. However, we will begin the slate of games and the season of picks, this top 10, with my ACC champion. The Clemson Tigers are facing off against Duke Monday. I believe this is it's a 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff on Labor Day Eve.
Oh no, this is on Labor Day night.
Oh, Labor Day evening.
Yeah, this is the lone Monday night game. Let's get into it, shall we?
Yes.
My top 10 games of week 1. I'll do this every week throughout the college football season. One of my favorite exercises of the week. Probably because I don't physically exercise. This is a mental exercise that I enjoy.
Give yourself more credit.
Game number 10. I walk. Game number 10. Number 9, Clemson at Duke, 6 o'clock Central Time, ESPN, Monday night on Fox. I don't think that Duke can do it. All right, Hutton, I don't think they're ready. I love Riley Leonard. I think that we're very quick to try to bury Clemson. I think Clemson with Garrett Riley is going to be pretty darn good offensively. Cade Klubnik has the talent to get it done. They're way more talented than Duke. I don't think this game is all that close. That's why I have it as game number 10. But it is in prime time, the only game Monday night, Labor Day night, you can watch Clemson at Duke.
I really want to side with the Blue Devils. But far too often, I find myself doubting Dabo recently over the last couple of years. A lot of it has to do, Chad, with his stance on the portal, with his stance on when you commit to us, if you take another visit, screw you, you're out.
Yep.
I don't like that philosophy. It works. And this is more about a week 1 defense to me than it is about a week 1 quarterback in Leonard that everyone's harping on saying, you haven't seen him, but you need to. I've seen Klubnik. and I've seen good and bad. But I'll take what I've seen there paired with everything around him and what's returning. Talented wide receiving core. Of course, we know about Shipley in the backfield. And then the all-star defense. I'm taking Clemson. I'm just hesitant to say it's by 13 or more. The 2-touchdown spread that I think if memory serves, I know this has been a blowout game in the past for Clemson over Duke. I just think if the quarterback, Leonard, is as good as he's stacked up to be, this should be a tight game in the third quarter. That's likely a backdoor cover if you take the points. I would take the points in the game. Clemson's winning this game, though. I'm with you.
Game number 9, Colorado at TCU. TCU a 20.5-point favorite. This is the big noon kickoff, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central on Fox. I'll be completely transparent here. This is not going to be a close game. I think TCU is going to roll Colorado in this game. But the coach prime part of this makes it a must-watch. Everyone's going to tune in
the unknown
for at least a little bit of this. And if Colorado can play with TCU and be in this thing in the fourth quarter and have a chance to win, it is going to be epic drama for his first coaching game at Colorado. I'll be tuned in for that one. Colorado at TCU, game number 9. Game number 8.
Chad, just real quick on this.
Yep.
Everyone's talking about prime, and fine, there's the hype. Just know that Sonny Dykes, it's a tough coach to go up against in year number 1, game number 1 at Colorado. Plus, I mean, the other question would be the new quarterback for TCU with Duggan, and knowing what he's capable of.
Remember when Max Duggan just decided to just run it every time, much like Jeff Sims did last night in the Big 12 championship game a year ago? That he was just battered and bruised by the end of it, but he just took it on him. I'm just going to run every time.
How quickly we have forgotten about TCU in the mix of the national discussion. This is a bad matchup in week 1.
Game number 8. Sunday morning, if you're in Central Time.
Good.
Noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. Northwestern at Rutgers.
College
Rutgers,
and church.
A 6.5. That's right. The old church segment. You get out of church, you head home, you watch Northwestern, Rutgers. I'm interested in this mainly because of the Northwestern piece in all of this. Everything that went on with Pat Fitzgerald this offseason. How do they look? How have they recovered? Are they going to be able to get the job done or stay with Rutgers? And for Greg Schiano and Rutgers, not that they're going to be a factor, but are they going to be something that's mediocre in the Big Ten? They got to win a game like this going away, if so. So I'll be tuned into this one. It's on CBS, by the way.
Think about this. It's rare that Rutgers has a game where they have something to lose, right? Normally they're in the Northwestern spot. They're playing with nothing to lose. Here's Northwestern, though, where Pat Fitzgerald is fired, 6 weeks ago?
Yep.
7 weeks ago? It's a 6.5-point spread on the road for a team that won one game a year ago. A team with an interim coach that was a defensive coordinator at North Dakota State.
Doesn't say a lot about Rutgers. Does not say a lot about Rutgers.
This is screaming money line bet, is it not?
For Northwestern or Rutgers?
At 6.5?
I don't know. I think
this should be a double-digit spread based on what has gone on in a month and a half.
It's hard to know what Northwestern is right now, so we'll find out.
A lot of Big Ten scandals and headlines. We didn't mention Rutgers. This should be a double-digit spread, and it's not. It should be at least 10. At least I take away in that regard, especially with the game at Rutgers.
Game number 7. Let's get a little bit weird. Let's go early morning.
Give me a reason.
Big Ten Network action. Fresno State at Purdue. Ryan Walters, the new head coach at Purdue. They're a 3.5-point favorite at home. Jeff Brom out. Kind of a strangely quick coaching search for the replacement. They hire the young, I think he's 34, 35, Ryan Walters, defensive coordinator from Illinois. He's the new head man at Purdue. They get a tough test in the Fresno State program that's been tough for a while. Only a little bit more than a field goal favorite at home. I think it's going to be a great game, a great first test for Ryan Walters at Purdue. Purdue is a team that could be one of the worst in the Big Ten in Walters' first year. If you're looking for a money line upset of a Group of 5 team over a Power 5 team, I would mark this game as a possibility with Fresno State and Purdue.
I'm surprised you have it higher than some of the games beneath here, especially Clemson Duke.
Yeah, and that's just my buy. I think Clemson's going to blow them out.
Yeah. And I like what you said there, though. You're picking this game because you think this could be just an outright upset. Okay, I'm paying attention to this. Making a note.
Louisville, Georgia Tech tonight. This is the one game on Friday night that's going to make the list. This game is in Atlanta. Louisville, a touchdown favorite. It's at 6:30 Central Time on ESPN. I think Jeff Brom is a terrific coach. He's back at his alma mater now. Georgia Tech, elevating their interim coach. Jeff Collins out, and now the interim coach in. Brent Key is the interim coach that got the job. I mean, it's not going to be a huge transition, you wouldn't think. But what do they look like? There's so many unknowns.
What's
with
the
two
crowd
new head
like
coaches.
for this game?
That's a good question.
At Mercedes-Benz Dome.
I was doing a radio hit yesterday, and the host asked me, "Does Georgia Tech have fans?"
Right.
I don't know. I mean, are Atlanta, Georgia Tech fans in Atlanta going to fill up the stadium? They're at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I doubt it. So I don't know what the atmosphere looks like. But anyways, it's a Friday night game. It's the biggest one of the night. It's the ESPN game. Louisville, Jeff Brom's debut, taking on Georgia Tech.
How far it's dropped? I'm not trying to knock this game because it's worth tuning in for. Georgia, Oregon, Georgia Tech, Louisville, a different marquee there, even though it was a boat race of a game a year ago in this spot.
Different profile of programs, for sure, than this one.
Different crowd.
Can't win them all in that
Different
Atlanta kickoff classic.
Georgia crowd versus Georgia Tech crowd.
I think this is the Aflac kickoff classic. For years, it was the Chick-fil-A kickoff classic in Atlanta. But I believe it's now the Aflac kickoff. Whatever it is, it's going to be Louisville, Georgia Tech. Number 6. How about top 5, Hutton?
Let's hit it.
Ready for this? Game number 5. Sleeper game of the week for me. Texas San Antonio is a 2-point favorite on the road at newly minted Big 12 program, Houston, in their first game as a Big 12 Power 5, now Power 4 program, 6 p.m. on FS1. This is a game a year ago decided by 3 points. Houston had to hold on to win. Frank Harris, the quarterback at Texas San Antonio, another guy who's on the outside, kind of looking in, maybe trying to mount a Heisman campaign.
Who did we have on that was coaching him? He was the private coach, a former NFL player.
I don't
he
remember.
mentioned Frank Harris as his favorite college player.
Well, he's in his 7th year at Texas San Antonio. 7 at one program, has not moved around. 7th year, COVID year, red shirt, medical red shirt. 7th year at Texas San Antonio. Houston's got a transfer quarterback in Donovan Smith from Texas Tech. Dana Holgerson's on a bit of the hot seat. This game on FS1, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Central tomorrow night. I'm excited about this one. I think Texas San Antonio moving from Conference USA, they won that conference. Now it's the American Athletic Conference. They are the media pick to win
They're very
the
good.
AAC in year one.
At their level, they are very good.
And that's a good conference.
It's their style of play. It's familiarity with of course, the quarterback with the system. Frank Harris has passed for nearly 60 touchdowns in the last 2 years combined. It's very up and fast-paced.
Keep in mind, too, Tulane a year ago, AAC champion, beat USC in their bowl game. And UTSA, Texas San Antonio, moving up now to the AAC, and they're a team that's a favorite to win that conference. So very good team. Don't sleep on that game. Game number 4, for me, this is more of I want to see NBC's coverage of the Big Ten, and does it look just like a Notre Dame game? Or are they doing something different? West Virginia at Penn State. 2 name programs. Penn State trying to show they can challenge in the Big Ten East. 7th-ranked team in the country. They're a 20.5-point favorite in this one. This game is at 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern on ABC. West Virginia is a team that was 5-0 a year ago when they rushed for 200 or more yards. They're going up against Penn State that did not give up many rushing yards a season ago. Strength versus Penn State's strength. I think this just speeds up the process of Neil Brown getting fired, but I'm going to watch it nonetheless. I'm excited to watch this game Saturday night, tomorrow night on NBC.
Not much buzz about Penn State, Chad, this offseason.
Which may be a good thing.
Yeah, and I think the overreaction off the weekend will be the Nittany Lions and how they handle West Virginia. New quarterback coming in, and just this is the year that James Franklin needs to climb the ladder, right? We said that a lot, but this is a chance to take a step up on the staircase. It's open. Schedule opens up a bit. I think they handle this, and it's a large spread to begin with. What, 20 and a half?
20 and a half for this one.
I like Penn State at home.
I think Penn State is, by the way, we can get to the top
three coming up
when we come back, but I think Penn State, Hutton, I think they could win the Big Ten this year. I really do. It's going to be tough against Michigan, Ohio State, but we get to start to see that on Saturday night.
Win the Big Ten, and then they go into 2024 where they're doing away with the divisions, which is very beneficial for Penn State because you're getting – is it Ohio State they get off the schedule or Michigan? They don't have to play them both every season. It's one or the other.
Yep.
Coming up, we've got the top 3 games in Chad's list. I'm intrigued to see where he has the game he's been – touting for about a week and a half.
I have
which
one
is,
of the games, Hutton, you've been touting.
Okay.
That's in the top 3.
Chad's all over South Carolina, North Carolina. I don't know if it's going to be number 1 on his list. It may be, in fact, because there's a lot at stake here. Spencer Rattler,
outside the box,
is Rattler going to start the season the way he finished the season? If he does, that could also be an overreaction.
What Carolina fans want is for him to go through the season the way he finished the season.
We will also
right on
give
through
you
start and finish the way you finished last season.
3 outright winners for underdogs in college football. All of that straight ahead. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And what he reposted,
he bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Headed to the weekend, 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Chad's got his top 10 games of the college football weekend. Clemson, Duke, Colorado, and TCU. Rutgers hosting Northwestern. Purdue and Fresno. Georgia Tech and Louisville, a game tonight. Houston and Texas San Antonio, the Roadrunners. And Penn State, West Virginia is where we left off. 3 remain. Chad, number 3 on your top 10 games to pay attention to this weekend.
Number 3 is a Jonathan Hutton favorite. Boise State, the Broncos, headed to Seattle to take on number 10 Washington. The Huskies, a 2-touchdown favorite in this one. Game will be at 3:30 Eastern Time, 2:30 Central on ABC. Boise State's got a great running game. You think passing a lot of times at Boise State. They are a run-first team. George Holani, over 1,100 yards a year ago on the ground. Washington, though, stout against the run. Here's something to keep in mind. When I picked Michael Penix Jr. earlier today for Heisman, Washington a year ago, number 1 in America with fewest tackles for loss given up, number 1 in fewest sacks allowed. So they keep him upright, and that offense is designed to get rid of the ball quickly. I like Washington this game, but Hutton, I've got it number 3 for a reason.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good matchup.
I think it's a fun game. That's why I've been on.
Yeah.
I think it's a race. It's a sprint to the finish line. All of the betting experts are heavy Washington, and it's a 14-point spread, right?
Yep, 14.
If it's the sprint we think it will be up and down the field, this is one of the more entertaining games of the season, not just of the week. And if you believe what Boise's bringing back, and they're not going to be intimidated by 70,000 for the Washington fan base, I would take the points. Even though I know Kelly told us earlier the dumb money is on Boise State, smart money is on Washington. Entertain me is what I want from this game.
Entertain me, clown.
Yes,
that's what we want out of this game. Any of those West Coast games, we're normally saying just entertain me, clown. That's what we want.
And Chad, Washington for you. You're heavy Washington in the Pac-12.
I got Washington winning the Pac-12. I've got Penix Jr. winning the Heisman. So I definitely need them to win this game. Game number 2, maybe I'm being true to the list. It's my second favorite of the week. We'll get to number 1. North Carolina versus South Carolina in Charlotte. ESPN College Game Day will be on site for this one. North Carolina, ranked 21st, 2.5-point favorite in this game. South Carolina a year ago, 27 turnovers. They've got to clean that up. They would have been much better. Last 2 games of the year, terrific against Tennessee and Clemson. Too many turnovers before that. Can North Carolina just make 2 to 3 big plays on defense? Generate a turnover. Get a big 4th down stop. Do something. A year ago, the Tar Heels defensively were atrocious. 111th in the country against the pass. One of the worst defenses in all of America, regardless of conference. So if they can get something going, generate a few big plays, I think Drake May's the better quarterback than Spencer Rattler. I think North Carolina's offense is better than South Carolina's offense, especially considering some of the players who transferred out for Carolina. But Hutton, I got to see North Carolina's defense be improved to actually believe that they're going to be anything this year. But they don't need to be great. They just need to be okay. They need to make a few plays. That's what needs to happen in this game.
South Carolina, they've got questions up front, questions with their run game, and just questions on the consistency of Spencer Rattler. Is he going to be the quarterback that we saw with the first 6 games of last season, give or take a game or two, or the quarterback we saw over the final month where he's throwing 13 touchdowns on a stretch run where they looked very, very good? Trey Knox at tight end, and they also have a returning receiver that had 70 catches last year. I don't know about Dow Loggins calling plays, but what I do know is Rattler is very hot or cold. And I don't know if it has as much to do about North Carolina's defense as it is just Rattler on or is he off. Don't know. Don't know which guy we're getting. I do know that there's a lot of hype around him now. He's driving a $150,000 vehicle on campus. Time to show up because Drake May will show up in this game.
By the way, we saw South Carolina's old offensive coordinator last night in Nebraska, Marcus Satterfield, who's the offensive coordinator now for the Huskers. Not a great performance, 10 points in that game. Looked very frightened at times in the sideline. But he did have that nice trick play called that worked in that game. So new offensive coordinator being broken in for Carolina with Dow Loggins. It's going to be a fun environment. It's going to be one of those kind of split down the middle type games, right, when you see the stadium. So I'm looking forward to it.
South Carolina's won like 4 of the last 5 in this matchup.
Yeah. They won the Duke's Mayo Bowl in the last matchup against them. Game number 1, Hutton. No big surprise.
Let's go.
Top 10 matchup. LSU number 5, FSU number 8 in Orlando. This game is on Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. Who holds up better up front? To me, that's the big question in this game. Both have stout defensive lines. Even with Mason Smith out serving a suspension in this game from the NCAA, LSU is still terrific up front. Jared Verse, one of the best defensive linemen in America for Florida State. So who holds up better on the defensive line? Jordan Travis, Jaden Daniels in this game. Let's go. This is the matchup we've been talking about all offseason. It's going to decide a lot nationally. I'm ready for this one Sunday night.
So the offense last year for Florida State, top 20 offense. We did not see that offense show up against LSU a year ago. I think both groups show up offensively in this matchup. And I love this game. I can't wait to watch it. I don't think I would have it number 1, Chad, just because of this. I don't think it brings a heavy burden if you lose for either program. LSU, we saw what happened last year. They end up beating Bama. They lose to Tennessee. They still go and get into the SEC championship game. They're given credit for that, and someone's trying to make the argument they should be in the playoff if they win. You know, you've got all of that as a 2-loss team. Florida State, meanwhile, can still go and take care of business against Clemson, and they're at the top of the ACC. It will be used against them, but not the same way it would be used against Utah if they lost to Florida last night. You can still make the argument that either one of these teams is deserving at the end of the season on how things play out. I think it is. I mean, it's certainly a chip on the record, but I don't think it matters in terms of
the way it
achieving
propels
the goal.
a team, right? Like that.
Well,
to me, that it's less about what happens to the loser of this game and more about how huge it is to always go back and show this win throughout the year for whoever wins this game.
And think about what it means for the quarterback that wins, right? Travis or Daniels, because that's the other name we'll begin to hear as one of the top players in college football.
I think this could be a game where neither quarterback shines, but because the defensive line is the talk for both teams. Right? I mean, there's going to be a winner in this game, but I could see it not being some crazy shootout with the quarterbacks putting up enormous numbers, but being a really good, football game that we'd see back in the mid to late 90s, kind of type game. It could also be a shootout. I could see that very well with these two quarterbacks. Going to be fun either way, and it's going to be awfully impactful for these two teams moving forward, especially whoever wins this game.
Looking forward to it.
Can't wait. That's my top 10.
Chad, love the top 10 games each week. And LSU, just scanning through the top 10, did you have trouble finding 10 games based on the slate?
No.
That's not all that impressive.
No, but here's what happened. Usually I get to 13 or 14 and have to weed it down.
Mm-hmm.
This time I had 10 exactly. I didn't go to 11 or 12. When I just went through every game, I marked down 10 of note. So it was very easy to pick the 10. Then I had to order them. The order, once again, number 10, Clemson at Duke. Number 9, Colorado at TCU. 8, Northwestern Rutgers. 7, Fresno State at Purdue. 6, Louisville, Georgia Tech, neutral site in Atlanta tonight. Number 5, UTSA at Houston. 4, West Virginia at Penn State. 3, Boise State at Washington. 2, North Carolina, South Carolina in Charlotte. And number 1, LSU, Florida State. 5 versus 8, ABC, Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. Football is here, and that's all I care about, all I'm concerned about. I'm excited for the weekend.
Did we have any spreads on this list where the wrong team is favored? It's time for our weekly picks.
I love this feature.
We are taking outright an underdog every week to win in college football. Davey Hudson joins us for this as well. We need to come up with some award or maybe a punishment for the 2 losers of this at the end of the season. You win outright, you get the points slotted next to the team's name. Just to tie everything in, because I know no one's going with this game, Chad, did you consider Michigan State, Central Michigan for your top 10 games of the week?
Oh, I absolutely considered it, Hutton.
That's one to watch.
I considered all of Kelly and Vegas's games also after she laid out those 3 that I parlayed. I thought about all of them as well, but I did not pick any of those.
So I'll kick things off where we left off with your top games. I'm taking Florida State and 2.5 as the underdog. I'm just viewing this from which quarterback do I trust the most to shine right out of the chute on the national stage. I'm taking Jordan Travis, and it's a revamped Florida State offense. There's some new faces there, some transfers, 5-star incoming. You've got a couple of 4-stars as well. It'll look different, but it will look very much the same because of the quarterback. Jaden Daniels really impressed me a year ago. I'm looking at Florida State to back up the talk in the ACC this offseason over the last couple of months from the top down, and it starts at quarterback with Jordan Travis. I'm taking the 2.5 Seminoles to win outright.
I like that one. We are going to keep up with this too, Davey, right? The point total as we go? Good.
One of us has to win first.
I like a good scoreboard.
We're all starting at 0.
Love a scoreboard. We may be 0 for a few weeks. Who knows? Although I don't think so after this one. South Carolina, North Carolina. Here's the difference in the game. South Carolina plays some defense. North Carolina plays none. Drake May's the better quarterback than Spencer Rattler. I believe that. I think South Carolina plays just enough defense to win a wild shootout Saturday night in Charlotte. Give me the Gamecocks. 2.5-point, very small underdog. South Carolina, 2.5-point underdog. I think they win outright against North Carolina. That is one where the wrong team is favored because the team that's favored doesn't play any defense.
What does Shane Beamer say after the game when they win?
Oh, it's going to be a lot of emotion. It's going to be a lot of, everybody doubted this group.
Yeah.
All obviously talk about transfers. Talked about, it's going to be very chip on the shoulder type.
Slot back in line. No,
here.
Well,
I'm here to tell you, South Carolina's not going anywhere. That's what I'm going to tell you. That's right.
And the other thing, how many of you talk trash about the hire of Dow Loggins? How many?
Yeah.
Screw you guys.
You know that I got Lou Holtz's signature right here? Talking about Dow Loggins. Lou Holtz, Bill Belichick. Have you heard of him? He talked about him too. They're all going to be there. Davey, who do you have?
Yeah, guys, one of the great things about all 3 of our picks is each one is happening on a different night. My pick actually happens tonight. Hut, your game between LSU, Florida State, we know on Sunday, and then Chad, North Carolina, South Carolina tomorrow night. I am taking Hawaii +3 over Stanford. Hawaii, we saw them play last week against Vanderbilt. Kept it close. Ultimately weren't able to get the win, but Hawaii has covered their last 5 straight games at home. Timmy Chang, I think he's going to be able to get that win this year, first win of this season. Stanford also no longer having David Shaw. They've brought in Troy Taylor from Sacramento State. I don't really know what to expect there, but I think Stanford just being listed as a Power 5 program, now they're in the ACC, is what's giving them the edge in the betting markets here. And so give me the Rainbow Warriors to pull off the win.
I like it.
Are they looking ahead to USC next week?
Yeah. Well, they've got the emotion, too, of all the wildfires and everything that took place in Hawaii, coming back to the islands for that game.
Let me say, though,
I like that one a lot.
Stanford, who could not find a home, had to take a pay cut to go to the ACC today. What a slap in the face on an already slap in the face offseason.
I mean, Stanford is basically, Davey's right, they're group of 5.
To go and lose
They don't really
to Hawaii.
have a conference. They just kind of technically do right now.
A team that last year in Hawaii, Vandy nearly put up 70 points on.
But this year, if Hawaii doesn't throw an interception into the end zone from the 1-foot line, that game's going to overtime. It's tied. And they threw another interception on the final drive to
Davy's
go tie
going to win
it.
this outright.
I mean,
well, we'll see.
I needed a reason to stay up until midnight for kickoff.
You have it now.
Hey, football is back. Enjoy the college football weekend. We are back with you on Tuesday, recapping a slate of headlines that will be chock full of overreaction.
They're going to blow your mind.
Let's just say.
The headlines
Overreaction.
will blow your mind on
We'll
Monday.
also be going into week 1 of the NFL season.
Can't wait, Hutton. We made it.
Cheers.
Here's to the weekend.
A toast to Labor Day weekend. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern daily right here across the OutKick
Cheers.
Network. Enjoy it.